Live broadcast will begin soon.
Okay, I just started it.
Do you see me in there now?
I don't know how often this updates. I don't. The question is, can you see us? I mean, it doesn't really matter if I.
All I see is live broadcast will begin soon. And it's just kind of a fuzzy screen that says Houston M1 meeting.
Okay. Hit refresh and hit refresh in your browser.
Okay, now I see y'all sitting at the table.
Okay. All right, excellent. So we'll, I guess.
It still doesn't show her on there
It
yet.
doesn't show the viewers, but I think that's only because, now can you, if you mute your phone, can you actually hear us through the computer?
I hear myself talking.
Oh, okay, excellent.
So I'm going to disconnect, okay?
Okay, thank
All right,
you.
okay.
All right, good deal.
Bye-bye.
So I completely forgot what we were talking about.
Huh?
Oh, we were talking about the different versions of M1. So,
So do you think your system is, you said 500,000 invoices a year?
there's a lot of invoices.
That's a lot.
But honestly,
And one thing that I like about our current system, each location, they may do 50 invoices a day. It does that in one consolidated run and makes one journal entry for that whole run, as opposed to a single. I'm going to go from, 200 journal entries a month for sales to 12,000 journal entries a month for sales.
reports are going to be big for you.
Yeah.
So now we have 2 viewers. So welcome whoever just joined.
Much more batched than M1 appears to be.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, I guess one of the downsides to batching is that you don't get real time. It depends on how they batch it. I don't know. But like I was saying, yeah, I think even when I worked for ECi, there was very few accountants that were in love with it. But
It took me a while to get
it takes a
used to.
while. I mean, even now we still write reports for. I'm working on one right now through SQL reporting services where we actually have a. So our main company is here in Houston. It's where the majority of our manufacturing is. We have a R&D facility in Auckland, New Zealand, and they do R&D pilot manufacturing and things like that. So we actually have completely separate databases. We don't work off the same database.
Okay.
So we do a lot of intercompany things.
Right.
So one of the reports I'm working on right now is to basically take our open PO report in our database and be able to side-by-side display their order backlog report in the same currency,
Right.
on one page, so our accounting folks can reconcile that.
Right.
So it'll be interesting. But I'm going to do it in SQL rather than Crystal because I want to be able to schedule it. Although I do have a merchant automation now, so I could probably do it that way. But I want to be able to schedule it as a subscription, so it gets sent to them once a week or whatever, however they want.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I'm really just getting my feet wet and looking around in our sample database.
Okay.
And things, so it's all very new to me. Is there in both of our receivables and payable systems, we can do screening where we can look at a customer's account or a vendor's account and see invoices open and things like that.
So
It looks like it's more like running a report here to do that, or is
not necessarily.
inquiry?
So I'm going to go ahead. I see that we've got 3 people in. Obviously, this is not exactly the two-way that we thought it might be. So I'm going to go ahead and share the desktop, and we'll flip back over to M1. So there's a couple ways you can actually quickly kind of see what somebody has. So one of the ways is if you happen to be in internet or organization entry under contact management, you could go to the particular company. You could also see this in Explorer. All right. So on the bottom of the screen here, you actually get a snapshot.
Hey, Todd.
Yeah.
I just see you. I don't see.
You don't see the desktop.
There you
It's delayed, I think.
There's probably a little bit of a lag. I know when Lisa and I tested this last week, it was pretty snappy, but I don't know. So if you're actually in here and you're looking at the organization, you want to see who their contacts are and things like that. You have an aging total down here. It's just strictly numbers. Doesn't really give you any detail.
Right.
But the nice thing is yes, it is a report to kind of get more detail, but you can literally just right click on the organization ID, right click and just jump right to the aging report.
Okay.
And it fills in all the parameters for you at that point. So assuming that we don't want to change anything, we would just hit preview.
Okay.
And there it is.
Okay.
So.
One of the other things I like is when I'm running my total aging for all my customers, I can actually just click on the customer and email a statement as I'm going through my AR report.
Right.
The other thing is I noticed on the contact management, when you have a customer, we used to have all the POs, all the
Oh yeah, that's an Explorer.
we used to have all those listed, but it got so full that we actually started removing the invoice numbers, right?
Yeah.
Invoices off there, because then the guys would have to sit there and search for all the POs and.
So Explorer is basically a collection of searches related to that same organization. So typically Explorers are read only, so this would more than likely be grayed out. That's the way they usually recommend sending it out. But if I want to see, like, for example, their open sales orders, all I have to do is click over in the search grid here, and I can see this information. I can change columns, do whatever I need to do, like any other grid, and drill down from there to see if I need more detail. Open AR invoices. So, and then even here, even though you can't necessarily add things to this list, you can, however, click on the name of the grid, and from there you can actually select additional grids. Like, I know one that we use, that our accounting people use pretty frequently to flip back and forth between, is they'll come down and they'll look at their open invoices, but then rather than trying to sort these and figure out like what's past due or where it falls within the bucket, we've actually done an offshoot of this grid and flipped it so it only looks at open and past due invoices. So they would literally just click on this name here, find the grid they want, hit select, and it just changes the content. So.
But is that grid gonna stay? It's not gonna stay there?
No, because the next time I come in here, it'll go back to open AR invoices. So, I mean, like I said, well, in this case it did because I didn't close the whole window, but I don't know where it was right there.
It'd work the same way if it was for a vendor, right? You
Yeah.
do their AP
Absolutely.
stuff.
Now, these guys are only a customer, but if I were to pull somebody up, like in the sample database, I think ABC Supply is a customer and a vendor. Maybe, maybe not. Yeah, see, these guys are a customer and a vendor, active customer, active supplier. So they actually have even more things that you can look at within the tree. So, but yeah, right click is definitely your friend. And I always turn that off. Sorry. The automatic scaling. Should get wide enough. So, but I mean, like, what other things that you typically use to look at stuff?
Some of the other stuff that I look at is, or Sally on the payable side, is if we're getting partial shipments and then we can pull like uninvoiced receipts, because they turn in the packing slips to us or to her, and we may find that we only may get a partial shipment. So we bring in just the amount that was received, even though the line item may say for 10,000, but they only received 5,000. So we go in and change the amount. Then you can go and look at your uninvoiced receipts and find, uninvoiced receipts, and you can see what's left or what's been received, but we don't have an invoice for. And usually we check that at the end of the month to see, and then start calling vendors, hey, I don't have an invoice for this. We received it on such and such date. That's real handy in doing that. Some of the other stuff is
And that's actually in
under receipt
management.
see the uninvoiced receipts if you go
So
there.
you've got your quick view on the grid. So it just gives you the kind of the basics. And then you've also got, you can run a receipts on invoice report.
Okay.
And I know one that our folks use a lot is the PO receipt audit. So they'll look at this. We won't be able to run this for,
I created one today,
did you?
yeah. And I added 2015 because there was no fiscal
There
year
was nothing in there.
2015.
I'm gonna go back a few years, see if we pick up some stuff. Oh, there we go. So, I mean, this one's kind of nice because if it is a PO receipt tied to a job, it will actually not only give you the part information, the job information, the supplier, purchase quantity, unit of measure, the PO, what's left to be received. We actually modified this to show landscape because it's kind of busy to read it like that. So we turned it on its side and kind of spread the columns out.
Well, I find, but my guys like to export these to spreadsheets.
Yeah, so then they're looking for a tabular.
Yeah, so you want to get it all on the same line, and then it shows up on the same row in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, well, that's another reason why we've started using SQL reporting services, because that stuff is either, when you display it, it's either tabular or in a matrix, and it exports to Excel so much nicer.
How do you call that from?
You actually don't.
Okay.
I'll tell you more about it later. It's this project I've been working on since August. It's actually pretty nice. I can show you some stuff.
I'd rather learn, that Crystal reports, because I think it's so powerful.
Crystal's good, but I mean, there's just some things that it doesn't do well. I mean, and having worked with both of them now for a couple months, Crystal's great in that sub-reports are really easy to interject, and you can have multiples, and you really only have any of that at that one point. Whereas SQL sub-reports are like a nightmare. But the good thing is you can literally have little queries of information that are all on the same report, independent of one another. They just need to have like a unifying factor, such as the filter for the report. So, like for example, I just wrote a bill of materials, or they call it bill of resources in New Zealand. Bill of resources report that they actually use instead of a job traveler, because most of their stuff is contract manufacturing. So on the report, it has the assemblies at the top, it has the operations, it has the materials, 3 separate queries, actually, and then we have production notes at the bottom. So it's 4 separate queries, and they're all tied together by the filter based off part ID and revision. So it's just 4 separate tables of information. So they like that because it's pretty quick and it's internal. I mean, you have to authenticate to AD to actually get to the internal page to run it. So it's a nice alternative when you gotta give a report to somebody that doesn't necessarily need to be in M1, or you don't necessarily want to be in M1.
Yeah.
So
I have a couple of OCs.
yeah.
Now you guys are all using COGS, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We turned on COGS.
Did you?
How do you like
Turned it
it?
on.
How do you like it?
We're still learning it.
How long have you had it on for?
September 1st.
So you haven't done your first month then,
Yeah,
yeah?
you're not a cops. All right.
We started out with COGS, and it actually was skewing the financials, because you actually have to do an offsetting to under your COGS and for the labor, and it was way off to the tune. I think it was like
It was quite a bit.
160K.
Yeah.
And so we turned it off.
I imagine that we will not use it.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest advantage to running COGS, and the reason why we run it, is just so you get part group level costing. You can get it other ways, but it's nice being able to pull up, your profit and loss on a given part group, or even a particular invoice, instantly, because you've got all those transactions that are hitting the GL as they occur, rather than just
After the
through
fact.
the invoicing.
Right.
So
We're at the
why
right
did
level.
and so why did you guys turn it on?
Control
Okay.
and to get those costs,
Yeah.
in a reasonable amount of time, because you're right, we weren't getting it. We weren't closing jobs, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So this is putting a little bit more control around it.
Well, I I have some caveats on timing I can definitely share with you.
Yeah, timing is critical.
Oh,
Critical
absolutely.
cost. Everything has to be done in order at the right time of year.
Yeah, that was one of the things, because that's why I wait till 2 weeks before I even post invoices in the system, because if I post before all the, what is it that they have to click at the end of every day?
You're talking about the time cards?
Not the time cards, but under, this is when we had COGS turned on, the manufacturing cost variance.
Oh, manufacturer variance, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
calculations.
So if I closed it before certain procedures were done, it wasn't showing, those numbers weren't being
The
transferred over
variances
to it.
weren't accounted for.
And I
correctly.
had people closing jobs before I posted invoices. And so, now, and it's a lot easier if I have to make a correction, that I go and I find that was from last week. It's a lot easier to do it before the invoice is posted than it is to wait till after, because then I can go out and say, reverse this, go out and do this, go out and do this, and then we do it. Otherwise, once it's posted, it's a lot of journal entries.
What costing method were you using with COGS? Standard cost or average or
We were using average.
What do you guys?
or standard?
Standard, average. We thought about going to average, but I think what we're gonna do is, and the biggest reason why we would go off standard to average is simply when we realize some cost savings over a period of time, we don't wanna have to necessarily wait till the end of the year when we roll, or even, like this year we did a mid-year roll. So that was kind of new for us to do a second cost roll in the middle of the year. And Monday, actually, we're doing a cost roll for 2 specific parts that we've used to buy outside that we're actually bringing in-house, and we're gonna see quite a bit of savings. So rather than that create a favorable variance to the bottom line, which, some people would take, but our finance director doesn't want that, we're gonna actually roll that part individually on Monday so that we're more in line with what it should be. And if this starts happening more often, then that's where we think we would go to more of an average.
Well, and the reason we use the average cost is because if we have a vendor we normally buy it from and they're out and we go to another vendor,
Yeah.
it could cost $3 or $4 more.
Sure, and you end up
So,
with a huge PPV.
exactly. And so that's why we use the average cost. It's just like a good example. We had to buy just 10 pieces of a part to finish a job. And it was like $9 more per part, when normally we pay like $2.
And see, that's the exact reason I use standard, because I want to see.
So you want to see those variances.
So I can tell who's doing what, what's changing out there.
Yeah, it was an aftermarket type vendor, I think.
Sure.
So we don't like to do that very often.
We do a lot of roll-ups. I do roll-up every day.
Yeah.
For hundreds of parts, different changes, new parts especially. One question I have on this, will Avalar work without COGS?
As far as I know,
Because it's tied straight to the product group. And would you still have everything?
yeah. Well, you still use a part group even if you're not on COGS, because you still want those sales to go someplace. The part that you don't use are those 4 accounts, those COGS accounts.
Yeah.
So if you're in a non-COGS environment, those COGS accounts they're not lit up or enabled at all. So just to show everybody what we're talking about here.
Are any of you using Avalar?
We're not. We don't have to charge tax in most
We
products.
want to go there, we're not there.
Well, the last month, we've been having nightmares with Avalar.
Really?
Anyone will tax it with the product code and says one tax rate and amount. You go out into Avalar Direct, put in the same tax codes, and you get a completely different amount.
It's getting lost in the translation.
M1's looked at it and they say, oh, our stuff's fine. Avalar looks at it and says, our stuff's fine. So now we have this going on. And they're having to go through invoice by invoice and go out to Avalar and tax it
Manually.
manually.
Wow.
Oh, that's a
So
good
you don't set it up, because I guess it's different by location
It's different by location,
and by state.
by type of construction, type of building, whether it's new or remodeled, and different parts, The pipe that holds the sign up is use tax rather than sales tax. So you have to have it broken down that far.
Yeah, so if you were in a non-COGS environment, the park group would actually look like this. And these COGS accounts that would normally be required in a COGS environment are no longer even editable. So as far as I know, I mean, I confirm that with support, but as far as I know, you can use Avalara without COGS.
Yeah, because I think you would set it up in the sales tax.
Mhm.
Well,
Avalara's, the setup is interesting, if I recall. You have to set it up, you have to define park groups that correspond to the tax codes that you define in Avalara. And the tax rates in M1 become really inconsequential, really.
Yeah, there's no tax rates in M1 itself. It goes out and pulls them out from Avalara. Like we would normally have 8 park groups for our company. And I think we have 87 or 88 park groups because we have to break it down by
You gotta
different
break down to the tax groups, yeah.
tax groups in there. And maintaining those is a nightmare.
I can imagine. Yeah, so I mean, really, the biggest requirements for COGS, if you are going to run it, is your parts have to exist in the inventory. So you can't just create parts on the fly. They have to have a part group assigned at the sales order level, so it's a required field. Part class is a required field at the inventory level. So I think that's probably about it. I mean, you have multiple functions you have to do on a regular basis. So you have to post your shipments to create your journals. You have to post your receipts to create journals.
post your time.
You have to post your time cards to create journals. Like Lisa mentioned earlier, if you're not running payroll in M1, you have to do a monthly journal adjustment to offset all the labor and overhead that's being pushed through by COGS that normally would be offset by your payroll if you were running an M1. So we do that every month because we don't run payroll. I mean, it's one of the few modules we don't use. Payroll. And I mean, we run our COGS is, I don't want to say it's I mean, it's pretty unique, but at the same time, it's probably not, because we do a kind of a hybrid, if you will. So we run COGS, we get all of our journals throughout the entire transaction cycle. But at the end of the month, we still do a inventory reconciliation entry, just like you would in a non-COGS environment, after they've gone through and reviewed, purchase price variances and everything else. And really the only reason we don't do that is because we do not use the calculate manufacturing variance, because our accounting folks don't like the way it shovels everything into that one specific account.
They don't like to see red on the financials.
Well, that too. So, and honestly, part of it is probably because when Millar went live, they didn't do the manufacturing variance from the beginning. And so by the time I actually joined the company, 7 months later, it was at a point where it's like, okay, what do we do? Do we take a big hit on the GL, or do we continue to start, keep moving along with this system that we've found that works for us? So, but if you are running it and you're closing jobs every day, you have to be running that calculated manufacturing variance.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Every day you're closing jobs, you should run that.
And you have to run that before you post your AR.
Yes.
And all that type of stuff.
Yes.
Yes.
And I was basically, since I'm usually the last one to leave, I would run it at the night, because usually the buyer and stuff come in before I do in the morning. So I would always run it when I left at night.
Yeah. So you guys using shop floor entry, Gary? Okay. So with shop floor entry, you don't want to have this problem nearly as much as anyone that's not using it. But time cards should be posted generally within a 24-hour period of after they're actually created. Reason being is if you have a job that closes and there's time cards associated with it, they close the job and then you post the time cards after the fact, your WIP report gets skewed.
After you close the job, or?
Yeah, because what's going to happen is,
Manufacturer receive it.
so understand, and that creates a journal, right? So what'll happen is it'll actually take all of your labor and overhead that was applied to that job, and it pulls it out of WIP at whatever your average cost is, right? But whatever's left over is supposed to be cleaned up through the calculated manufacturing variance.
Okay.
But if your labor is posted after the job has already been completed, it never shows on a WIP report correctly. And so those dollars tend to kind of sit behind. So one thing we found is we apply labor at a standard. We're just starting out with actually collecting shop floor entry labor in real time, but we're only doing it for like one segment of our business. So what we found is that on our main product line, we pretty much have it dialed in. We know what our costs are, so we apply standard labor. So our folks were going ahead and they were kitting the jobs, sending them out to the floor, and then when the job was complete, they would do the time cards, do the manufacturer receipt all in one time. Well, because they're putting basically 40 hours of labor in it on one time card, it stretches the time out. So you had labor that didn't actually occur until after the job was completed. So it skewed your WIP report. So what we've done is on the time card entry, we have 2 buttons. So we try to post the labor, we try to apply the labor more when it actually occurs. So we have labor that we apply right away when the job is kitted. And then we have labor that is applied 7 days out, because that's roughly about when it happens. So the dates on the time cards don't go past when the job is completed. It's led us to a much more accurate work in progress report.
But if you delay like that, doesn't it mess up your inventory?
It doesn't, because the manufacturer receipt is still done when the product's completed. So for these products I'm talking about, it generally takes about 30 days for them from the time they start the job till the time they do the manufacturer receipt. It passes inspection and it's actually in inventory. So we've actually got, like I said, 2 buttons. They put labor in when they put their kitting labor in when they create the job. They put another time card line in for that job. They mark it 7 days out. And then there's, on some jobs, there's actually a third step that they mark 21 days out. So that all the labor is actually dated and completed before the job is actually completed and manufacturer receipt's done. So otherwise what was happening is this job would show on the WIP report with no labor, no overhead, no labor, no overhead, and then it would close. And then you'd apply the labor. So it was quite a mess. Now we actually see we've got, our WIP numbers are actually accurate, during the month instead of just at the end of the month when we do the reconciliation. So ideally it would all go away if we did we did SMP labor costing across the board, but that's kind of small steps first.
Yeah. But that's where we were off. That 160K that we were off was all in labor. I have my payroll report, so I know what my labor is costing on a monthly basis. And then our labor is accounted for, and when we have certain assemblies and certain processes through the plant, that's how it gets calculated on our job costing reports. But the actual labor, I know it was really skewed.
You said you're not using payroll?
Nope,
Yeah,
not using payroll and not using COGS. Now, I understand.
No, we use paychecks and just do it.
Yep,
Do a
and I
JE
just
to get in there.
enter it with a journal entry every month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because if you're using COGS and that accrued labor, you're gonna have to use your payroll report. Unless, I'm not sure how the payroll in the system works, but when you post it, you're gonna have to post against that accrued labor.
So what happens is when you actually set up, even though you don't have the payroll module, you can actually go in and set up these accounts. So you actually set up like your standard rate and everything. And these are tied to well, I can't expand it because you don't have it, but they're tied to various expense accounts that you want. So, I mean, having implemented quite a few the folks that did use payroll. It works well once it's set up because you really don't have to do anything other than update the tax tables every year.
Right.
Or if the government changes forms, then you just import the new report. So it works well. It just, there's a lot of setup to it. And
What about the overtime? It didn't calculate overtime either.
overtime doesn't calculate unless you're using the payroll module.
Oh, okay, I got you.
But in there, they've actually done a pretty good job of trying to account. Yep, absolutely.
That's what you said.
They've done a pretty good job of trying to account for kind of the, strange cases where you might have overtime that's paid on a daily basis as well as a weekly basis.
Right.
All the California labor laws.
But we started with payroll, and it ran just fine for us.
Yeah.
Then we got HR people in, and they wanted all the bells and whistles for HR, which M1 didn't handle.
Yeah.
So they went to paychecks, and they went to ADP. But yeah, gosh, payroll in M1 was great because all the time cards were there, and it was great a session.
Well, we still have time cards that you can see and.
Yeah,
still-
you can run the time card audit report and it'll show the number of hours that somebody has, but it doesn't on that report, it doesn't calculate overtime because what it would need to calculate overtime would be the payroll definition that you are never going to set up unless you're actually running payroll.
Well, I had to write
Did
my
you
rules in
write-
SQL
Yeah.
to export to a flat file to send to ADP. And paychecks, they both have the same.
Same format.
I was just looking at something in there. Questions, ask away. I want to focus on what people have questions
My
on.
question was along with the sales tax, that I'm having issues because I do AR, and that was in a few states, it was not calculating correctly. Or wouldn't calculate at all, other than maybe one freight line. And then I had to go into Avalara to calculate it, and it would give me all these taxes that it should be charging.
No, because you can set up the taxes based on your customer too, but, so you charge a use tax to the customer as well? You said something about use
I
tax.
pass it on, yes. Like in the state of Texas, they have use tax on stuff that's not taxable for sales tax. They charge use tax on it.
Yeah, the use
I
tax
make sure I
is,
pass that along because it's, pretty healthy chunk of change. $40,000 a month worth of use tax.
I always thought the use tax was for products you use within your facility, not to your customer.
So ours is, we're kind of a hybrid of construction and manufacturing. So we'll use a lot of the stuff, we'll make them a sign, and that's subject to sales tax. But the pole they use to go out there, or a piece of pipe, and prop it up, stick it in the ground, that's not subject to use tax. I know this is a little off the base for what we're doing today, but since we were talking about COGS and all this type of stuff, one question I have that we're working on now, when you go in and do a bill of material and you're doing your operations, there's a spot in there for setting up to where it can run concurrently. Can't think what the name of it is. Overlap.
Oh yeah, operational overlap.
Operational overlap. When you use that, it only uses, when you run this, have that on, and you run scheduling, it's going to try and start all those operations that are overlapped at the exact same time. It doesn't run them concurrently per se. They have to be exact.
Yeah, because you can choose what you're going to overlap, either the start or the end of the operation.
Right.
Yeah.
But you can't offset them in there at all.
Not currently, but
Yeah.
it's my understanding that the scheduling will allow for that, as well as individual employee and machine constraints in the new version.
Oh, 9.2.
Well, actually, I think it's somewhere in 9.9.1. They the roadmap they put out there is because it's fairly detailed.
See, this is setting it up by the customer.
Oh, okay.
How'd you get there?
Okay, I'm under the customer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm under the customer. All my customers, until I get this tax exempt form from them, my, whenever I set up a new customer, they're all considered taxable.
Mhm.
And, well, this is under supplier, where's the customer? And so here, sales tax.
You gotta check the box.
Where's, oops, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
So when we set up a new customer, they all say customer taxable until I get the tax exempt form. Then once I get the tax exempt form, I just right clicked, open with the tax maintenance. And here is where you can set up different tax codes. That's why I don't even use that Avalara. Most of our stuff is tax exempt because we're the contract manufacturer, but occasionally we have some that even the same customer will sometimes have, but it's based on the point of our location, not where they're located in the state of Texas.
See, with ours, we might have one customer that has 50 different locations in 50 different states. And we're sending stuff to all those locations. We have to tax it where it's being installed.
But is the bill of sale coming from Texas?
Yes, it's sold in the state of Texas, but where it ends up being installed is where we have to tax it out.
Do you do Freeport exemption every year? That's
And that's
on,
where our customers require us to tax it there, so they pay this tax and that.
interesting.
Because it becomes part of the real property once it's installed.
I know there are some states like California, you have to use their tax rates and stuff, but we've always taxed based on, well, if our customers are based here in Texas, it's based on coming from our location where we're located, where we make the sale. So even if they're in Dallas and their sales tax is 9%,
You're taxing it local.
it's being taxed locally based on where our location is.
Ours doesn't work that way.
Really?
Place at point of install. And one of the
Oh,
problems,
see, we're not doing an installation
one of the
either.
problems
Are
we're
you doing the
having,
installation?
yes.
Okay.
One of the problems we're having with that is, we're building a new CVS stores on the corner of, First and Main. We send it to a subcontractor that's on the corner of Second and Main. They're in different taxing jurisdictions. They're block apartments, different taxes. And when Avalara goes in and looks at it, it looks like where you're shipping it to rather than where it's going to be installed. And we have to go back in after it's been shipped, go back into the sales order line and remove the shipping destination in there. Then we'll go back and tax it at the correct location where it's being installed rather than the ship to location. And that creates a real nightmare for taxing.
Interesting.
It's all based on the ship location on your sales order lines.
That's interesting. See, we do a Freeport exemption because we turn our inventory within so many days and towards the end of the year. And the Freeport tax exemption reduces your tax liability for everything you have in stock if it's going to ship within, I think it's 180 days of receiving it. So you're always turning your inventory. And we get the Freeport exemption based on stuff that's shipped out of state. But everything is still taxed at where we're located, except I know California is one of those states that, for example, if our customer is here in Dallas, but they have a location in California, they're still taxed on the Texas rate, even though they ask us to ship to California.
Are they reselling it from California into someplace else?
I don't know, we're a contract manufacturer, so we don't charge state sales tax that much. There's a couple of people If they're using it for their in-house facilities, then we charge them sales tax.
In the location where they're the end users are from here, the end user location.
And so if the customer is here in Dallas, we charge them the 7.25% because we're not in the city of Houston, we're in the county. So ours is 7.25%. And that's only if they're going to use it in-house.
Virtually all of our customers are the end users.
Yeah, see, ours are not. Ours, like, we build something that goes on something that they have. So they take our part, put it on their part, and then they ship it to their customer. So they're responsible for charging that customer tax. So that may be where the disconnect is, yeah.
So for our contracts, we're responsible for all sales tax. We have to be the tax treasurer.
Because I guess because we're the actual, but you're the manufacturer of the sign, right?
But we manufacture it and we install it.
Yeah. That's where, because we don't install it in there.
And one thing we've learned that the tax rules are different for real property. Because once we install a sign in this building, it becomes real
It
property.
becomes real property. Well, that's where the use tax comes in. So we may make parts for one of our customers that normally, so they dictate to us based on their purchase order, whether it's going out or if it's for in-house use. You know, if we do a test fixture or something like that, that they're gonna want, then we have to charge them tax. Interesting.
Taxing such a, I mean, just every week I get updates. I don't know. We used to get them through Avalara, but 20 times a week I'll get updates. You know, this is changing their taxing rates, and their taxing boundaries are changing, and that creates nightmares for us. One of our other big problems is we put something on a building that's new construction that doesn't have an address yet, so it doesn't know how to tax it.
Yeah. Because a lot of them have local taxes as well. So, and it could be, we could be in the county here, but right across the street could be considered the city limits.
Right.
That's where a lot of mine is.
Wow.
Actually, it's easier to write short procedures for them.
That's interesting.
Sales. Short procedure.
No, we were talking about reporting.
Oh.
Are you doing your payment runs manually or through the M1 system?
No, I do them, you mean for checks and things like that? I do them through the system. You have to set up the check, you know, to make sure the format and everything. We had to adjust a little bit. I don't know if it.
But in your payment sessions, are you allowing M1 to do a date range to pick what you're
You
paying?
can do it either way, but I prefer to do it manually because the reason is a lot of times I like to see, let me show you. One of the things that, I'll go through my AP payment entry. Okay. Let's see. Go my next ID. Because I usually, what I do is I run my aging payables and I'll go through
And select what you're gonna pay?
and collect what I want to pay. Keep in mind, if you have invoices and stuff on hold, it does not show. Well, it'll show with a little H next to it when you have a dispute or something on an invoice.
We've never put an invoice on hold.
Okay, so we've done that if there's a big dispute or big price discrepancy, because the reason I do that is if I just go through and I pay it, then out of sight, out of mind. So by putting it, when I get down to where it needs to be paid, then I call the vendor, hey, I'm waiting for, you know, the corrected invoice or whatever. It just raises a red flag. Or if a vendor calls and says, hey, you've been skipping over this invoice, then it draws a red flag for me to, hey, why did I skip over that invoice?
But once you have the invoice in and you're putting it on hold, how are you making changes to it?
I'm not making, I don't make changes. I still post it. I still post it, but I put it on hold.
Mhm.
And then if I need, well, there's two ways. If I haven't posted it yet, because I do 2-week lag time,
Mhm.
and if they send me a corrected invoice right away, then I just go
Yeah.
ahead and I do it. But when they receive parts, it's based on the PO. So when they receive the parts, if I create an invoice and it automatically pulls it in, and if my invoice is less than what the invoice they sent me is, then it raises a red flag, and then Sally will call them and say, hey, the PO is for this, and then they'll either send a corrected invoice right away, or we post it with what our PO rate is, and then deal with the discrepancy afterwards.
Okay.
But I do like to do this is the sample database, so I'm just kind of grasping at straws to see what supplier. Well, I do know that I did. Let's see if I have any. And of course, there's no invoices. Let me, I set up one this morning. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to receive. It's going to be next. I'm going to go. Select. Why is it not? PO, there's my PO, select.
What are you trying to pull
I created this PO
up? There you go.
this morning. Okay, so open quantity, purchase, revision, warehouse. This is set up differently. So quantity received.
You're gonna receive it all, you can just click the mark all button.
Well, I wanted to do a partial.
Oh, gotcha.
Because we'll issue a PO
Mhm.
for like all year long and have them break it out for so many for January, so many for February. So there will actually be more line items
Okay.
than this, because they have to separate it by line items, but I just threw one together. Okay, so then I'm really not a receiver, but didn't I just do it?
You filled in the
Invoice quantity received.
inventory quantity received. Actually, here's the thing. If you fill in the purchase quantity received, it knows whether it's a job or an inventory purchase, and it'll fill in the according column for you. So you just have to fill in that one column there.
This one?
Yeah, purchase quantity received.
Like I said, I'm not a receiver. I got you. So we've received it. She turns in the packing slip. And then my invoice entry. Sally corrects me if I skip a step. Sally normally does this for me.
I get those guys too.
ABC. And then we cut down on the receipt ID. It should pull up receipt
So
ID.
you don't use the wizard generally?
No,
I'm just curious.
to create a whole bunch of invoices at once. Are you talking the payables wizard when I
Yeah.
pay, or?
Well, you could use it if you want. the AP wizard or the AR wizard. I mean, if you're doing a lot of invoices at once, it makes
Well,
sense.
we are,
If you're
but
doing-
we also scan them all and have to attach them all to each individual invoice.
Well, you can use the wizard to create them all and then just attach them as needed as you actually review them. Because either way, you end up with the same result. So I guess it's all personal preference.
So let's say we received all that in. And we get to the invoice, and our invoice, they only invoiced us for 200 instead of the 500 that we received, because maybe they, do one invoice per box or something, because it doesn't always come in. So then I'll go in and I'll change the actual quantity to the invoice. I shouldn't have changed that, but I guess it
You
doesn't.
can just hit revert.
I always forget about that button. So the purchase quantity is that, well, no, I have to change it, but let's just say the invoice. No, I have to change it. So match the invoice. Or if for some reason, we have a thing that if for some reason the price is substantially different than what their invoice says, then let's say it's less than what our purchase order is, then we'll notify purchasing, hey, change the price to this.
On the purchase order, you go back and change the purchase order.
For the next time, the price of the part. Because sometimes the buyers will send out a purchase order because we ordered the same part over and over and over, but they will send it out and sometimes they forget to change the part price.
Right.
And so they'll come back and they'll say, hey, it's not 15 cents anymore, it's now 12 cents. Well, sometimes the buyer gets so busy they forget to change it under the main part number. So then we'll come back in and let them know.
And you're using average price.
And well, we do, it calculates with average pricing, but when they actually,
use last for purchase.
yeah, for purchasing, we use the last price purchased.
Do you ever use the automatic function to update the cost from AP?
There's a checkbox in database options under AP.
I don't know, I'd have to ask Carlos on that one. I know that there's one thing that on the purchasing side, there is I can tell you what it is. On the purchasing, like this one's all created, right? Sales tax. Oh, see, this is calculating the sales tax. I don't know why. That's weird because I can't change that on the main.
You can't change the drop down for the tax levy.
Yeah. Not on the main
line.
set. Yeah. Because we have it. Yeah, stop. So they can't. I'm the only one that can change it under the vendor.
Did you guys do that through field security or did you do a customization?
Probably in the customization, because what was happening was they were entering sales orders, and especially on the AR side, entering sales orders, and we'd have to, they were actually clicking no tax, and I had no documentation, so Carlos stopped that, so they couldn't do it, so all customers are taxable. And if we have a big 85 or 100,000 order, it would show sales tax. And if they already started working on it and stuff, they're like, you got to remove the sales tax. Well, I have to back everything out, the sales order, in order to do it, have it come in. So now he's changed the permissions so that all I could do is go in and change it. What was I going to show you on the purchasing? Oh yeah, on the purchasing.
Yeah.
It's not on this one. There is a button on here and it may be, it's not on here.
Is it on the
It might be under inventory. No. There is purchasing. There's a button that she clicks that updates the part price. It's gotta be under inventory. Refresh part, oh, that's for the allocation.
That's just for the allocation.
Yeah, I was thinking it was for the part. So when we go to pay, like we were talking earlier, so when we go to pay, we can do what? I guess it just.
You already have one open.
So then I'll just go through, because when I run my AP, I know which ones I want to pay. I may not pay some on this day. I may pay them the following week. Some people I pay on Mondays, some people I pay on Fridays.
You run 2 AP sessions a week?
Well, because I go in, I don't print my checks. I print my checks once a week. But on Mondays, I'll get them ready and then usually print checks Friday. Monday, I run my payables and I have all week to go through and pay and then print Friday. Just depends on workload and what meetings is going on during the week. It's kind of fast paced.
And with us, they do an EFT payment session every week. And they pay as close to the due date as possible. But if you are not EFT, then they do those check runs on the 15th and the 30th. So you may have to wait. So it's been a great encouragement to get all our people to switch over to EFTs.
Well, see, and that's what, because we have a couple of vendors that we do EFT and also international and stuff. So those I only do once a month.
You guys are not doing monthly currency, are you?
No,
What about you, Gray?
Nope.
Everything's in.
You will? Yeah, we do.
We have an operation in Toronto.
We do,
They don't have an
US
American bank.
dollars.
A lot of Canadian companies use American
We do,
dollars.
but a lot of our customers up there are small customers, and we do our payroll, and we do our own payroll. They're people.
Wow.
Yeah, we have to deal in US dollars, British pounds, euros, Australian dollars, and once again, Japanese yen.
You know, we're simple, we do one currency, that's it.
Texas dollars.
Yeah.
Texas dollars.
But then we do payroll every other week, and that's it.
Do you get exchange rates
We don't get them automatically, we update them once a month.
once a month?
Really?
That's just what they've chosen to do rather than try to chase the currency fluctuations.
That's something you have to do manually.
You have to do it manually, so they do it once a month. I mean, I'm sure I could automate it. I haven't been asked yet. So, Brett, if you're still on, don't mention this to Stephen. I'm sure it probably could be automated from a source on the internet. I think we typically use XE.
Oh, I know I saw
I used to
showing
do
it.
that with
I didn't
payroll.
post the invoice.
Price.
It won't show up in your payables. It's not posted. I'm going, why didn't it show up? I know I just did it.
We're seeing really nice, real favorable rates between.
That's got to be difficult managing all those sales taxes.
We-
Can you imagine what it's going to be like when we close on that company in California?
Just financially stable now. Or Volkswagen, just like a beat. From America. Interest. Sounds like something in Europe.
Speaking of that, if you guys are buying a company in California, are you gonna run this as a separate company or a
Separate
division?
company. No, separate company.
Do you do anything with the divisions?
No. No.
Because we're about to break our company into like 5 different divisions.
Now, it's set up for different divisions, but they are actually separate federal ID, separate companies. And so we're gonna convert them to M1. And it's a company similar to ours that we're acquiring, but it will not be a part of the set of books. I'll have to merge everything. HR out there is gonna be a nightmare.
We did our due diligence on Acquisition California last year. Because of all the bureaucracy out there, we pulled the plug on it. Just too hard to manage.
Really?
So the HR laws and their comp laws are just unbelievable.
Mhm. Well, I mean, they go, and it's a at-fault employment state. So here you can give somebody a verbal warning, and not make it a part of their file and things like that. But out there, everything must be documented. You can't just go and let somebody go because you want to let them go. You actually have to have documentation. And they show up for work and the power goes out, you have to pay them for 4 hours. Whether they're there for the full 4 hours or not, they have some pretty strict laws out there. I used to live out there. But it's
Sorry.
So now I
I
get
guess we're in the back of the classroom.
Yeah. And so can Barbara and them talk and hear us, or?
Only if they were to sign in on Google. They signed in with it, because when you and I tested it, you actually signed in on your Google account. So when we were able to do two-way, so if they had signed in on their Google account, they would have been able to converse with us and have you, or they may not have microphones too. So like I know if Brett from our company is on, he has a headset. So if he had signed in, he'd be able to ask us questions. We'll plan it a little better for next time.
Update. So when we do the I don't know if this is going to pop up with the options. Yeah, it does. So depending on the types of checks that I ordered, I had several different formats of checks. So it just took us, even though we don't use that bank anymore, that's the same format we use when we print the checks. And
Pre-printed.
yeah. Mhm. Yeah.
We actually
And
went
so
with
then,
our-
you know, on the actual check,
we actually
if it's our windows, we just had to adjust it.
Yeah, we actually
So it would
them like
print
that
right.
on it.
But then when we had multiple accounts, the checks were slightly different from the bank. That's why I had so many selections, and we just had to set it up that way.
Do you set up corporate credit cards as bank accounts to reconcile them?
Well, let me tell you, before they did, yeah, I don't know, this isn't the live set, but yes, we have them as bank accounts.
Mhm.
Well, now, when we want to pay down one of the credit cards, when they came out with the new version, they stopped that. So I had to create a makeshift account
Mhm.
and then do a journal to, you know, post the payments, or do it as a bank transfer.
Otherwise, it doesn't pull through in the bank reconciliation.
Remember, Nancy was talking about that
Mhm.
earlier in the year, when they came out with the new version. It took that away where I could, how is it, I'm trying to say, so if I want to go and make a pay, you know, pay
Like a one-off.
a Capital One credit card,
Mhm.
I can't do it by cutting the check. I actually have to do it as a bank transfer, because I get an error that says this is a bank account and you can't,
Oh, yeah, you can't cut a check to a bank account.
yeah. So now you have to do it as a bank transfer. And what's really bad is when I run my reports, when you do a bank transfer, you can't put in the bank under the ID. You know, it took me a while to figure out what Nancy was
You
telling
can
me.
also do it as a direct debit session, just to account. Like if you're paying it online, you know, if you do any kind of, you know, direct debits automatically out of your
It's not showing on the
bank
checking
account.
account.
You can just do it a direct debit session.
Yeah, but
And then it
when,
doesn't print a check, but it will still, if you want, it'll still assign check numbers to those EFTs. So, I mean, it depends. Is your credit card either set as a supplier, or is it set as a bank account?
originally they were all set as bank accounts.
Yeah,
Because I
Because that's the way
paid
they-
stuff,
that's the way that it's kind of intended, is
that's
that.
how you told me to set it.
I know. Well, I know. So you set up the credit card as
I had to
bank
put it on the
accounts,
spot.
and then you just do a bank transfer to account for that payment. But some people will also set them up as vendors, and then they'll just go in and do a miscellaneous payment to that vendor
Right.
on a direct debit to account for them actually paying it already online.
Right, because, so for example, if I do a miscellaneous payment, I can cut a check and, send it off, even though I do it, but if I do it as a bank transfer, the ID
Mm-hmm.
goes away.
Yeah, all you have is the
So I
memo.
can't pull my report anymore under that supplier to see how many payments I made.
You put it on the memo. You can
That's
see
what I do, I have
Yeah.
to, but before, all I had to do was pull the supplier ID.
Yeah.
Or,
Because you could then run the supplier payment performance.
so if I cut, so same thing if I cut a profit draw check,
Mhm.
I had to create a separate account now
Mhm.
because it was treated like a bank account.
Mhm.
And I can't do it anymore, so then I have to reverse it with a journal entry at the end of every month.
So let me ask you this. I actually do have one accounting question. So they wanted me to ask. So we have a tendency for a lot of, especially in IT, we have a lot of subscription items. And rather than take the expense hit in the month that we actually sign the subscription or we purchased the subscription, they have been typically spreading that out over whatever the
12-month
length.
period.
Well, even the length of the subscription.
Mhm.
So, like for example, earlier this year, we renewed our antivirus for 3 years, and they gave us a 4th year on top of that. So they actually go in and they do a journal entry for each month of that subscription, just so they can kind of manage the cash flow better.
Mhm.
But I think what they're looking at is that it's become more trouble than it's worth, and they're looking to just kind of take that hit in that period.
Mhm.
I don't know, how do you guys handle yours? I mean, what would you
Well,
recommend?
We,
Because I don't really know either way.
It's just like our subscription for our M1 service.
Sure.
I put that in there as a prepaid expense.
Yep.
Instead of paid all at once.
and I do a
Then just have a
recurring.
recurring entry for it every month, just hit it that
Okay.
way.
See, I think they're not doing the recurring entries, even though we've talked about it.
Yeah, that's what we do for, like, when you close on a loan and
Sure.
you have your closing fees that you expense out for the term of the loan and things like that. And we put that in, I don't know if there's anything in here under reoccurring journals. And once a month, I usually do it on the 15th of every month. Then I'll go through and all my journals, I post them that month, even though it may not occur until the 25th of the month. I do it on the 15th of
Yeah,
every
as long as it's in that period.
And
Yeah.
it tells you, and then once you do it, it tells you the last date that was transferred, so you know you're not doing it again.
Mhm.
And then when you set it up for the term.
Mhm.
You set it up for the periods, the start year, end year, that way.
Yeah, the only one we wouldn't do like that is our Office 365 subscription, because we do actually get monthly invoices for that.
You do it
Yeah, but if it's
monthly.
the same every month, it'd be just as easy to
It
do
is.
something like this.
It is.
Do a recurring invoice
Well-
in there.
They actually, what they do is they take that monthly fee and they actually break it out by department usage. So they have to break out the expense accounts. So, I mean, they could do it here too.
Yeah,
sure.
And see, for
We do the same
us,
thing with this.
we have a dollar amount, so if it's under $1,000, take the hit.
Yeah.
If it's over $1,000, then we'll do it over depending on what it is.
I think they have a limit too. I just don't know what it is. So I just thought I'd ask. So
Yeah,
there's maybe a easier way that I was not aware of.
yeah, and I like this feature because it's just good we post, depreciation and
Sure.
and stuff. Some people wait till the end of the year. We do it monthly.
That's
We have a guesstimated amount that we do. And based on if we're adding equipment or taking equipment off, and then we shore it up at the end of the year. But that
Yeah.
way it gives him an idea of every month, instead of seeing all of a sudden at that end of the year, we're seeing $100,000 difference because the depreciation wasn't been posted all year long.
Mhm.
That's the way we do our payroll entries. Our payroll entry is like 280 lines long. So we have it in here where we bring this up and just go and change the dollar amount, all the accounts and everything are entered every time. It's the same, makes it a lot simpler.
Wow, that's a lot.
Is that,
My journal entry is,
are you getting that information back from paychecks? in the
Yes.
industry? ADP, I know ADP has a flat file that we import directly into the journal.
We could never get that to work.
we couldn't
tried
either.
that.
Mine, as a matter of fact, I'll show you mine's like.
There's an external account number that has to match whatever number that they're using.
Right.
Okay.
We
Just works for
match it
us.
up. It's just like, doing the upload when you started loading your GL from the beginning every time.
Uh-huh.
And we spent hours and hours on the phone with M1. They couldn't even get it to work. We cannot upload to our GL
Really?
at all.
It's not that hard, so I'm really surprised. It's just a flat file in a certain format.
Did we get
I run a little SQL that takes our GL account, the full GL account, and populates that external
Right.
number so they match because they use our numbers. And when I don't do that, they get errors saying, hey, there's no journal that matches that. I don't know, take a look at that.
See, with
that's not hard
us,
at all.
I get like a CSV file, and then what I do is I just sort it by the account numbers, because when we set it up, we use Prime Pay, which is half the cost of paychecks, and I like them because I'm dealing with the same person over and over. They give me the CSV Excel file, I just total it by account number, and I have, 15 lines that I enter, it takes me 5 minutes for the payroll. And then everyone's on direct deposit, and so we have like an in and out account, because I have to be able to reconcile. I want to be able to pull somebody and see how much they've made all year long, instead of just doing this way, because this is what actually posts to the general ledger, and then the individual checks are just posted so I can reconcile the bank.
Sure.
So she inputs that, but I would like to be able to do it automatically, but we've never been able to get it to work either. They even gave me Red Wing, right?
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure which one we use.
It's either
And
Red Wing or
we
Wing
can
Pay.
never get
There's
it to
only-
work.
There's only a couple formats that they all use.
Yeah.
Well, we have the same type of problem with our Nacha file for doing EFTs. Every time we get out of M1, it's different. Yeah, it won't maintain the format in there. I have to go back in and set all the accounts to the right spacings. And when you're doing a payroll AP run where you have 80 payments, it gets to be a real pain going in there and adjusting that file every time.
Export file?
Yeah, it
So-
changes every time.
On that EFT file, you have a check that conformed to Nacha. Because I know when we started doing EFTs, the bank had to change like one character on their side, because apparently the bank wasn't actually using the, Nacha, federal Nacha file. So,
Well, what's strange on ours is you will pay the same vendors time after time. And 1 week, or one pay run, and we go through without any problem. Next time it comes out and their information's all scrambled. It comes out of the M1 file.
you start supporting them.
Yeah,
That's
maybe.
it.
Sucks to us. When they call you back 3 months later and they still don't know what's causing the
For
problem.
something like that though, you gotta go to development, because even when I was there, the people in support, that stuff it's in the source code as how it comes out. So if you haven't already, I would say try to get a hold of Sandy. She's the I'm trying to remember her last name. Sandy T-O. She's the development manager, or she was a while ago. I mean, might even CC Adam on the email just to make sure it gets to the right person. But yeah, that should be a no-brainer. I mean, that should not change ever, because there's nothing. Even if you were heavily customized, there's nothing you can do that's gonna. Everything you do sits on top of the source code. It shouldn't modify that at all. So that's just an internal function when it exports that file.
Okay.
Greg, I'll either send you what I have, one of my files, and you could then try importing it into your system.
Okay.
Or if you want to send me a few lines of one of yours, just to see what the format is, because there's probably just something dumb in there, because they're so picky that you're not getting it.
Because even with what you guys, I still never could.
Yeah, I mean, I had actually had a copy of the regular format at one point. So.
Is that the format you're using, or?
I think so.
Yeah. Because when we went through help, or M1 help to do it, the guy actually told us, well, that's not meant to be used time after time. That's meant to, for the initial upload, and that's it.
For EFT?
For the uploading the payroll
Oh,
into
payroll.
GL.
Journal entry, yeah.
Oh, no.
We use it all the time. We use it for everything. Actually, we have spreadsheets that we just bring in through there. It sure makes it easy.
Yeah, because when I loaded the system, I did it through all the spreadsheets.
No, but now that I'm thinking about it, I could do the reprocess, and, because I just entered this manually, I've never saved it as a recurring and just use it to change the amount.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how they do our payroll journals as well. It's just a recurring journal, we go in and change the dollars.
Or one way I found to kind of shortcut the recurring, if I don't want to touch that GAE I'm making all the time, that's fine. Last month, still have to copy over the new number and go in and
Yeah,
change
so
it.
you can do say
It's the
that.
same thing, yeah.
Oh, man, I took all kinds of heat because they moved the save as and all that stuff
Oh.
with the new version. Are you on the new version?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they couldn't find their menus. What are you doing, my butt?
When you go from 7 to 8?
No, we went from 8,290 to 573. So,
They moved the say that?
well, they
Oh, you
put
mean
it all
the
under
menu?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's up here.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the toolbar,
I like it now. I think everybody's gotten used to it.
yeah, it's pretty, they fixed all the bugs to it. I mean, it's nice, it's got the big icons, it's more descriptive. I'm gonna tell you, it was a hell of a lot easier to train on than the old one. So you've probably never seen the old one.
No.
So when you're in an entry screen, you have that nice ribbon, it looks beautiful and everything. And and this is what we still run, the old version without the ribbon. It's just your typical file menu,
Right.
like in Windows, and the icons are really small, and there's a lot of them.
Let me ask a question relative to paying your vendors. The way we do it, we have 4 classes of vendors, and one is anybody who offers us an early pay discount, because we take those, and then we have our utilities set up as a separate. And so we pay bills 4 times a month, but on the 8th and 22nd, we're only paying discounts and utilities, and the other 2 times we just pay everybody to do. Is there a way to set up vendor types like that in M1 so that we can pay all of one category?
There's ways to definitely filter when you're looking at it.
We tried setting up a separate box in ours. We added a box for it. We could break ours down by like our overheads or our subs and just material vendors, but we can't find a way to pull it in like that.
I mean, you're going to filter in the search that you use to actually pull them in. So, I mean, you could use industry type.
That's what I
Well,
was.
your wizard is, do you have a?
Well, I mean, when you're in the auto pay wizard, it's the columns that are displayed there, if you're using that. So I don't know that you can actually add or subtract those.
You can't.
You could, but you don't.
Well, it's probably one where you gotta hack the data dictionary, right?
Yeah, you do.
So, but I'm just thinking in terms of if you're doing your payment headers one at a time and you're looking to see, okay, I need to pay my utilities. If you had something in the organization's grid that you could just search off of. So, I mean, industry type might be one way to do it. I mean, it's less than 5 minutes of work to add an additional field for a vendor category.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about customizing M1, but I mean, that's probably one of the greatest things about it.
Well,
Right.
and that's what we did, but we can't pull it in when they
Well,
look at
that's
their
true.
payables.
So
We can't get that field to show up.
if you go to, no, okay. So here's my
I thought
thought.
how to do that, but I wasn't sure,
Yeah.
you know, once I go to cash disbursements, am I gonna be able to filter by that?
So if I go to AP payment entry, not a valid bank account, and I'm going to create so when I go to my auto pay here, let's take a look at this grid. So we only got the one. Yeah, see, I can't, there's no, in some internal grids like this, there's an option to select fields, and then you can add or remove fields that are within those tables. And if you had that field in one of those tables, it wouldn't be a big deal. But
Go to your right, is there anything you can use out there?
well, I don't know. Invoice description. I mean, we use the direct payment to flag, you know, people we pay ETF and people we don't, or EFT, versus ones we actually cut checks for. But I mean, that's only going to get you one or, you know, two choices. But, you know, my thought was that if you're in a payment header and you pull up this supplier, you can, at this view, you can use any search you want. I mean, if you're not happy with the organization lookup, all you do is click on the binoculars and just say select grid. And then that's going to bring up the entire, you know, list of all the grids that are in M1. So let's just say,
But you could modify that grid that was there to add a column.
yeah.
Yeah, but then you have to do it one at a time.
Well, no, you do have to one at a time, but once you make the change here to switch to the grid you want to use, it will remember it for your login.
Right, but you're still having to go and
You still have to
payment
do
run
it one at a
one,
time, yeah.
And
But, you know, what might be better, what might
When
help.
you have the class of customers,
That's 100.
you know, could you make a class of
Sure.
suppliers?
Yeah. So, but here's something that might help, because we actually did something similar like this on ours. So when you go to, I don't want to customize report, but when you go to run your aging, I don't know, do they work off an aging when they're paying? I mean, how do they know who to pay?
We just pay anything.
Okay. So, you know, when you go in here to run the aging, again, you have any search available to you. So if you had a field at the organization level, you could sort by it. You can come in here, hold down control, select multiple vendors, add all those, run your aging, preview it, print, whatever you want. And then they'd at least have a list of all the vendors. So they wouldn't even have to mess around with the auto pay. Or if they did, they would know who they could check off.
But couldn't you, since you know there's class of customers, couldn't you create that class for vendors?
You could. I mean, you could.
Copy that script and put it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could
The
duplicate that field.
yes, it's not in that grid to select from them.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is not adding the field. It's where do I see it later on down the flood, down
You
the
know
line.
how that you can do your pricing for customers?
Yeah. So you're talking about customer group here.
Yeah.
So you could easily add a supplier group, or I mean, if you wanted to try to reuse an existing field, I mean, I guess you could do supplier rating. There's that too. If you're not planning on using supplier rating anyway.
Right.
But you know, it's going to be how do we see that information when we actually comes time to pay it? And in the auto pay, like Gary said, there's ways to manipulate those grids within the data dictionary, but you got to be very careful about what you're doing.
Right.
That's why I call Carlos.
There you go. Where is Carlos?
He had to leave.
I have a feeling he doesn't like us anymore.
He's getting ready to close on a company next week, so everything's swamped.
Busy man. But I know, like I said, we use the direct payment to indicate those people that we do EFTs to. When you check that, then you know your bank account information becomes required. So. Do you guys actually use the customer transaction report or the supplier transaction report?
Yes, all the time.
Do you?
Yep.
I was just curious. I know our buyers use this report, the performance payment report, all the time to try to hammer better prices out of vendors. And they run this and they say, all right, well, I can show you every invoice we've ever paid on time for the last 2 years. So this is why you should give us a better price or reduce our minimums.
That's interesting.
Huh.
Can you show that? What's that report look like?
Yeah.
If there's any data, there may not be.
But you should be able to pull something out. Just run it wide open.
Get a quarter of a page.
So, yeah, I mean, it's going to show the invoices by supplier, their supplier number, their terms.
1,302 days late.
It's like,
Don't use that as a
yeah, I don't use that one. But I mean, it gives you like a 2-tiered report. So it gives you the individual invoice totals, gives you your average invoice total, your highest invoice, or I'm sorry.
Yeah, see, when I fill out
average
credit
days to pay.
referrals or anything like that, I just do it directly from the customer.
Yeah.
I have not used that, so that's interesting.
It's an interesting little metric. I don't know if anybody other than our purchasing people actually use this or not.
No.
Yes, if you were going to the bank for a line, increasing your line of credit or whatever, that might be useful some way.
I know it's a little off task again, but in inventory management,
Mm-hmm.
Refresh part allocations.
Yep.
We've got a bunch of parts that are hung up in there that won't refresh. I get a list of 15 of them that won't do anything. What can
They just
cause
won't come
that?
off it. So the reason why the allocations get off is generally because we'll think about what drives an allocation.
Well, it's not that the allocations are off.
Yeah.
It's just, I have 15 of them in there that it won't recalculate the allocations. It won't.
It won't recalculate them at all.
Yeah, they just sat there no matter what. And one day I'll open it and I'll have 30 items in there. I'll run it. 15 of them will go away. It recalculates, does everything. That 15 just sit there. They won't move.
Anything unique about the parts? Non-stock?
Nope.
I'm not sure. I mean, as far as I know, there's not. If you go look at like the parts table, there's nothing in that table that would flag it for not updating.
It pulls up in that grid. I don't know why it would not.
Yeah.
I moved that to some SQL code and just run that task every night now.
So I run
Because they
that.
weren't forgetting.
I run that many times a day because we have so many receipts and shipments going on. People want to know where they're at.
You want me to send you the SQL and you can just put it in a job and just let it run every hour.
Yeah, that'd be
Do you
great.
have any questions on here?
Just,
Yeah, I mean, unless there's a flag somewhere in the
yeah.
data dictionary, there's nothing in the part at the part level that would say that this has been updated or hasn't been updated. Huh. That's interesting. What did support say about it?
They have no idea. They've been looking at it for a month now and can't give us
They
an
actually
answer.
looked at your like data dictionary and
Yeah,
everything?
we sent them everything. They logged into our system, looked at it, and they can't figure out why it's doing it.
That is peculiar.
Well, now look at the code that I sent you because it tells you just what it's doing. And so maybe you could run that code just through SQL to see if you're getting any errors or if something's coming back.
Okay.
And what's not recording.
Yeah, I mean, you'd want to do a SQL trace when you actually hit refresh
Well, that's what I did to capture the
to
code.
capture the
And
code,
then I
yeah.
just put it into.
But I'm just thinking, I'm like, that to troubleshoot it, that's the first thing I'd want to do is,
Yeah,
It's
we
actually-
trace that. We don't get any errors or anything. It's just like it.
Really?
I'm going to ignore these. and not calculate them.
Okay,
Are
well, I'll send
they
you this and see what it calls
non-inventory parts?
No, they're all the stuff we use all the time.
Huh.
It's a combination of finished goods and raw materials.
But it's the same 15.
Same 15, they're locked there and they won't do anything. And we can do transactions in the part, we'll receive them, sell them, everything, and those numbers never change on there.
Well, you know, I wonder if they have a different SQL statement that pulls those records than updates it. I never looked at that. But it
Would
might be
actually,
one of those
would actually
machines.
generate the grid, yeah.
Yeah, it might be updating them, but for whatever flag
you.
that pulls them.
And it's not showing it on there.
Yeah, so see if it's updated.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'd have to,
Yeah, see, that SQL code might be different than the update code. Where,
Yeah,
I wouldn't bypass those guys. Do something.
yeah, I can't get into customize to see what it is.
Yeah, that's why I had to run the profiler just to see what the
Yeah.
SQL code was. They won't let me in there. I keep asking.
Any other finance questions?
Check and see if Barbara or Steve
Have
have
any
questions.
What about just putting in an invoice in payables for a non-PO item? The plumber comes and
Just take,
We created an account called G&A, so I can put whatever GL code I need to put in.
so assuming that you're not running COGS, or well, even if you are, basically you just create an invoice. I'm assuming that the supplier would be in the database because you'd have to cut them a check at some point.
Right.
Supplier's invoice, I put in whatever the invoice is that they give you, or the, trip ticket. Here, if you're running COGS, this is gonna require a part ID. If
We
you're not,
require it anyway.
yeah, and a lot of
That's why
people
we
do
created
anyway. So
the
what's it
G&A.
called? Just G&A?
Uh-huh. No, G, just,
So you might create, like they did, a standard part that you use.
Right.
And then to provide searchability on it and reporting, keep in mind, every text field in M1 is searchable from the global search. So you could come in here and you say, plumbing. Yeah, is that right?
then you put in the quantity and whatever the amount is.
Yeah, well, in this case, it
So
would be,
is your unit cost $1? Then you put in the $150 that he charged you. 150
Yes,
quantity.
it's either 150 quantity at $1 or, because it's falling under G&A, so it's not gonna,
It's a non-inventory item.
yes.
Okay.
Or like
So-
for our electric, like actually on our electric bill, I have it set up under the vendor as far as a certain percentage, because we had an electrical audit done. So we know what's taxable and what's not for our manufacturing process. And so 10% goes to G&A and the other 90% for the shop and everything goes to the cost of goods.
so something like that.
We use this setup to allocate stuff like our trash for our different departments. When we go in there, we have all the departments listed down here and then we
Yeah.
get 10% or whatever, how we want to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not-
But we have a separate part number for trash or whatever, not get set every month.
And
Or
another thing we
department.
did with all the accounts, we put in all the accounts we could possibly take.
Yep.
And one of them is 100%. But, if we need to change that.
You can split it out.
Right.
Yeah.
That's how we do our Office 365 subscription distribution.
Mhm.
So we actually have a little part for it. And then the expense accounts, it's the same expense count with all the departments.
Mhm.
And then they just break it out every month.
Whatever percentage.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, that's one of those. I see.
but see, right now it's just Sally and I that do any coding, but once we close on this other company, eventually everything's gonna be coming out of Houston and we'll have different companies for we'll have several different data sets, one for each company.
Intercompany billing. We do it
Well,
every day.
that's what I was doing with ABCDE when we had the engineering portion
You have
and
all
stuff like that.
databases set up for each.
We do.
each-
We have one
So how
one
do you do
database for Houston, one database for Auckland.
When you do your intercompany, do you do it at cost or with profit margin? on it?
There's actually a transfer price that has a small profit margin built in because we can't. New Zealand law has something about basically that New Zealand division cannot operate as a basically debt magnet or a write-off for us. They have to make a certain amount of money because now they're a 100% R&D facility. So yeah, we have a transfer price that has a little bit of profit built into it for them. So they can show a small profit at the end of the year. Because I guess what happens is, well, especially with foreign companies, a lot of companies will set up subsidiaries outside the United States, let them run up debt, and then they take it here as a write-off.
Yeah.
So.
You sell them everything at this price until you don't have any profit here, and that way your profit over there.
Exactly.
Well, that's the other thing. That's what the IRS is worried about. Over there, they're just worried about, companies accumulating debt and then just eventually being dissolved. So, but, yeah, I mean, it works out well. I mean, they do some pilot manufacturing for us, but the majority is done in Houston. So, seems to work out all right. Although I am constantly amazed at the types of questions I get from them with as little as they use M1. So.
And we try and keep all of our packing slips the same as the invoice number. They used to be different. And when trying to pull information, there's so many different numbers that if you start one system, it starts with the same set of numbers as you start with this system and this system. So I started actually, instead of generating the invoice number, every packing slip we have when we deliver product matches our invoice number, unless it's a miscellaneous invoice for, like, we do have a customer here on site that leases a small amount of space from us to hold their inventory. So I have a set of numbers that are for just miscellaneous invoices that don't have packing slips attached to it. But it's been a lot easier to find stuff by having them the same.
We staggered ours so they didn't all start out at 10,000. Because if we need to find something, we just use the word used. Plus, most of our reports, if it wasn't already on there, where the record came from or where it was going to, we actually added it to the report. So, the packing slip has exactly what sales there it came from. The receipt has what PO it came from. The invoice shows the PO and the receipt. So, it's just the way we set it up. I don't know, honestly, when it comes to IDs, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. I mean, some people use strict numbers, some people use alphanumeric.
Can you, if you are invoicing multiple shipments on the same order for one of your customers, are those invoice numbers tied together at all, or are they just all unique? Like our current system, it's A, B.
Well, we invoice from the packing slip. Right. Most of our customers want a separate packing slip. For PO. But you can invoice multiple POs on one invoice, but a lot of customers don't like that.
Right. Yeah.
And it does show all the different line numbers.
So when if you're using the invoicing wizard, you do actually have an option to group shipments. You can either group based on ship location or invoice location. Most people honestly use none.
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to work for us. Each of our locations does their own invoicing.
You guys are planning all running off the same database?
It will be the same database.
Which means that from one location to the next, your invoice numbers won't be consecutive, right? So. But you know, at any given time, you can always look at all the invoices for a given customer, a given supplier through Organization Explorer. Just pull up whatever company it is and, oh wait, did I go before? Yeah, I did. Apparently these guys aren't anything. There we go. Just added that back recently, didn't they? The right click option in the tree.
Yeah, I like what they did with the tree.
Yeah.
Clear all.
Yeah, no more of the clicking the eraser 20 times, right?
Going to the sales orders.
Uh-huh. Entry or Explorer?
Yeah, entry.
Sorry, that's just happened. I never do any data entry, so I'm always looking for something.
And
And another one.
why is it? Oh, go to new.
Okay.
And just type in the ABC that has multiples. I wanted to see something on there. That first one.
Okay.
Now see, why isn't it showing all the
Invoices?
invoices and everything? Or maybe it's showing up under the invoices where it was showing.
Well, I'm in Sales Order Explorer though. I'm in Sales Order Entry. I'm not
Maybe
in
it's Explorer.
Explorer.
Yeah. I just wanted to see if it. See, it's not showing up on there, all the different invoices and,
The actual invoices?
well, it used to show up in a whole line of, you know, invoices, sales orders, change orders. And it's
Well,
not showing.
that's going to be Explorer, or Organization Explorer, not Sales Order Explorer.
Yeah, but it wasn't showing up under Organization Explorer either because you were just there.
No, I wasn't.
No,
I was in Sales Order.
You getting that now? Oh,
Oh, whoops, sorry. Still haven't fixed that. Which one do you want?
ABC. That
There
one.
we go.
So maybe now it's showing it that way in the new version, and that's why we're not seeing all the, you know, how the guys were complaining about
Have
the
to scroll
purchase
through
orders
them.
having to scroll all the way down to find the current purchase order and change order. I think now this, did they just do
Yeah,
this?
this has been like this for a long time. I don't know what search, or I don't know what entry screen they were in. But I mean, the only time you'd have to do that is if you had actually gone into like, you know, like purchase order entry and opened all of them for a particular supplier at one time.
Because we actually had to start going to the bottom and deleting maybe that was on the invoice.
Yeah, because it's not in the attachments, so he doesn't need to open the attachments.
Well, I mean, I can expand that.
So is that what you mean, Lisa?
Oh, yeah, that's what it is, all the attachments, because we put a copy of the PO and everything in there, and all
Yeah,
the
but you can
invoices
go in
were
here.
being tagged to that.
Yeah, but you can go in here to the sort options and you can tell it, like, well, that's actually going to be for the whole thing. Guess you'd have to go into attachment entry.
Like,
If you wanted the oldest
Oh, see, those aren't
attachment.
labeled attachment types or anything either. Interesting, because we were going in and taking out, see how we're, in the, under the source info, it says AR invoice ID,
Yeah.
PO ID.
I remember
So,
we talked about that the one
yeah,
time.
and it was just getting so cumbersome that sales was having a hard time with, especially with one of our customers where we're invoicing 20, 30 invoices a day, that they would have to spend all this time trying to find the PO.
So rather than scroll or go to the last one, they could always click on the search itself. And then when they double click on it in the grid, it jumps right to it. So if you ever got an item where there's multiple records, if you go to the search above it, you can actually search here
But see, none of them are labeled.
and then jump to it, and it automatically jumps to that record.
Yeah, see the attachment type, when messing with that, they didn't put whether it's purchase order, change order.
Sure.
Interesting. Maybe it might be my setup. Have you looked at like reconciliations, anything?
I have not yet.
That's gonna be fun.
Yeah, they're gonna improve the reconciliation.
I hope so. I hope
It's
so.
I
horrible
don't
now.
remember if it was specifically listed.
One thing you have to pay attention to is when you actually, if you have to void like a check that, is an old check or a lost check, make sure that you're doing it. If you want it to show up on your reconciliation, make sure you post it on the date that you want it to show up on the reconciliation. Otherwise, it may clear. And I had some problems with it in the beginning where it wasn't showing up in the current reconciliation. And it would carry over. I'd reconcile it 1 month because
Yeah, it would post them there.
and then the next month,
Are you on the
the check was
user board?
voided, but it doesn't go back onto the reconciliation.
Definitely get on there. I mean, it's going to generate a decent amount of email, but
I know
It's
I'm
pretty
saying the
useful.
terminology wrong, but
Um,
now I had to start paying much more attention to make sure that they're being done in the same month.
trying to find I thought they posted to the roadmap in here, but I don't see it.
Somebody had some questions on the reconciliation.
I actually just answered a question today for our Auckland folks. Turned out what they were looking for 2 transactions that they didn't realize happened on the day after they were. For whatever reason, our Auckland people reconcile every single day.
Okay.
Just the way they do it. So they were reconciling for the 21st, expected to see 2 transactions. Turned out, once I backtracked, those 2 transactions actually happened on the 22nd. So there you go. That's why they didn't show up. So.
They physically go and post a reconciliation every day.
Every day.
Wow.
I don't know how good the search is on the site, so. Let's just do that then. All right. I might have it in my email. Video. So this is just the FAQ. That they put together. The video is probably about 40 minutes long. I thought they posted this stuff too. There's some stuff about Avalar. What were we just looking at?
Okay,
There's no question. As soon as they started talking about SaaS, I was like, oh, so they're going to push us to the cloud? Or because honestly, given our FDA regulations, we'd never be able to run in one cloud.
No.
It's the only reason why I haven't put it up on Azure.
Yeah, you were working on it.
I tested. I mean, I can use Azure for the site recovery, but I can't actually put it up there and host it.
We have Azure. I hate it. It's horrible. If I get our IT guy to do it, we'd go back to Rackspace and
Is
do
it just
dedicated
slow?
hosting in a heartbeat.
What's today about it?
Just slow.
Speed.
Speed is horrible from it, and it's so inconsistent.
and you guys are using US Southwest, I mean, that data center is not even too far physically from where you're at.
Yeah, it's like
It's,
7 miles away. something like
yeah.
that. And it's still.
Huh.
And we have multiple servers. We have people going in. We have set up on 3 different servers. Server 1 might be fast. Server 2 is slow. Server 3 is slow.
So
Just-
within, I know this is completely off topic, but within Azure, so you've got a terminal server farm set up with three boxes for everybody to dial into.
Right.
And then behind that, you've actually got your M1 server, right?
Right.
I know.
It's just so inconsistent.
And you guys seem pretty sharp. I would have thought he would have done like solid state and premium storage to get those speeds up.
We have everything that can put on there. We've gone through it.
What does
So I
Microsoft say?
doubt it's a single server.
Oh, that's probably not, especially if it's, I mean, they're all within their own network too,
Mhm.
you know, so you have them all on the same node, but. No. I mean, I haven't done, all I've done so far is I do have site recovery set up for Auckland. So Auckland right now they're running on 1 physical server, 3 virtual machines. They're all replicated every 15 minutes to Azure, and if they died, that machine died, then we would just point it to the cloud and we're up and running. Replication took forever because I had almost a terabyte on the file server. But anyhow, yeah, if you guys want, I'll send. You have the full distribution list, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I can. You should have this in your email too. I mean, everybody that's a customer should have gotten this.
Yeah, we got it.
It may have gone to Carlos.
Well, why don't I forward it to you and you can forward it to the group?
Okay. Bill Adams.
It should come up.
There it is.
Oh, that's why I don't have USB. And then you want the video too?
Yeah, might as well.
Oh, that's a meeting invite. You don't want that. Yeah. Yeah. That's the original one. Alrighty.
Are you from Scott? It's kind of Gary, Jackson, Jackson.
David Jackson.
Oh, yeah, Jackson.
I can probably
Where are you located? Out here.
Lone Star, about north of Longview.
All right.
I was gonna say, go into the bank reconciliation.
Sure. I was just there today. I mean, in theory, this should be a pretty simple part of M1. I mean, it's nothing really more than balancing your checkbook. In fact, I think I actually used to tell people that in training. But somehow it doesn't work out that way, does it?
Mm-mm.
For some reason, we got, this is probably the same 15 records that he has. Like 15 checks that were duplicated. And so we cleared one set, but the duplicates stay there. I don't know.
They just keep showing up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they have a variance?
No.
Because that's the thing that always throws people off is that you've got the variance within the bank rec and then
Hit
you've got the variance to
The
the
next
GL.
ID, or go to bank statement one, there you go.
So this one, we haven't cleared anything.
Well, I uncleared it this morning because
Oh,
I
did you?
didn't, yeah. I was just
Messing around.
messing to see if there was even anything in it. But in the beginning, it would take me hours because we had 4 or 5 checking accounts and transferring, if I transferred like money into payroll or money into the other account, because we have one bank that you have to go through 2 banks for foreign funds. And so we kept one bank account strictly because they had their own international number instead of having to go through 2 banks. Because when you tell an international company you have to pay it through this bank and then in care of this bank, with the ending person being us, they're like, huh? So that's why we kept
Yeah.
the Comerica. So if we ever transferred funds from one bank to another, it doesn't tell you in the transaction. It just says like a fund transfer, but it's not telling you what bank account it's coming from. So if I transferred funds, 10,000 from this account into this account, I'm taking a guess unless I right click, and right click to see which account that really came from. Because if you check the wrong one and then you void a check, let's say the check never cleared and you void it, you could void the wrong check. Then it creates a nightmare. And that was happening quite a bit in the beginning. And then I started writing extra notes on the description with a date from this one. And then I would eventually have to go and right click just to make sure it was the correct account, the correct account. Because otherwise I was doing a lot of journal entries in the beginning. It would take me days to reconcile the checking accounts.
Yes.
Now that we're down to just 3, it takes me maybe 2 to 3 hours.
Yeah.
But that was one of the, when you're doing banking transfers, it just doesn't tell you. Like right now, if I go to pay an Amex payment, it just says Amex payment. And if we're paying, 10,000 or 15,000 and we're doing it multiple times, when I'm going to reconcile the American Express, I don't know what account it's coming out of.
Right.
So I'm guessing, unless I go through every.
You also need to make sure that if you're going to be doing bank entries, or you're going to be doing journals that are basically bank transfers, under database options in the GL section, make sure you have that check or create bank entries for journals.
So that it links into the reconciliation.
Correct. Otherwise, it will not show in the rec at all.
Yeah. Before, that was one of the other things that was happening in the
Yes.
beginning. I'm
Well,
like,
and in this test database, it wasn't checked either. I just checked it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. So if I go back in there,
Mhm.
so it'll probably be very boring. But what have you guys started your implementation?
Yeah.
So the very first time your implementer comes out, the very first training they're going to do is what they call essentials. And what they should do is literally, and it'll be boring as hell. Believe me, I've done it and I've been in both ends of it. They should literally go through every one of these settings and explain to you what they do. And it is very important.
Sure.
And of course, honestly, most people 5 minutes later are gonna forget what they were.
Yeah.
And then you have issues like 6 months down the road. Why is this journal not creating bank entries? And sure enough, it's because we didn't check that box. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's that difficult to program.
When we
but I've used
converted
it for 10 years.
when we went from a different MRP system to this, and when we converted, like when we used the setup, the fiscal year maintenance, the chart of accounts, and then we imported the beginning balance, that was a smooth transfer. I didn't have any issues with that at all.
Good.
When I set up the accounts. Because it's done through, what is it? The
Data mapping.
Let's do
the
yes, it's not through the data mapping.
right, but I mean,
But
I
you do that-
manually
you do
put
that-
them in.
Yeah, but you do that opening journal. The thing is, you do that
Yeah,
opening journal, and
Yeah.
it basically sets your beginning balances for all of your accounts.
Right.
So basically what happens is you print out your balance sheet out of your old system. You create a journal entry that matches that balance sheet, print your edit list for the journal, and then you sit down and then they have to match 100% or you don't post it.
Right.
Same with the AR and the AP by running the agents and stuff. So I had no problems when, applying funds that came in for invoices that I didn't have
Right.
and things like that. One thing I wish that I would have known about was taking those existing invoices and being able to attach them
Oh, is it attachment to
that AR, because it would have been helpful, and because I was using both systems for a while
Right,
just to make
sure.
sure. But other than that, I mean, I didn't have any problems.
So
Are
what,
you putting history in your general ledger account?
Pardon me,
Are you gonna put any history in your general ledger?
we haven't decided yet.
Because I found that helps a lot on the reporting
we did
in
it
M1,
a year for you, right?
3 years,
3 years, that's
3
right.
years worth.
What, you imported the history?
just the balance.
Just the
account-
balances.
Account balances every month for the 3 prior years. So that way,
So
on the
3
reporting, it
tables.
gives them something to go by for variances
Tell
and
me to do
comparisons.
that.
Honestly, Gary was the first customer I did it for.
That would have been
I
helpful.
knew, we knew it was, other people had done it, and it's always possible, but the actual data import, it's like 3 tables you have to import to.
Wow.
Your opening balances, your, the opening balances, closing balances, and then GL and GL lines, so 4 tables.
Well, now we've been in it, we've had it long enough that I've got my 3 years history.
So you were talking about, because you guys added this stuff here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we added that down there, so when I make a deposit, she scans the checks.
Yeah.
And I can go and
So you
see
can come
them
down
right
here and
there,
actually add them as an
instead
attachment.
of having to open it up on each individual payment, right click to go see what's being paid. I just have copies of the checks and everything right there.
So good, I'm glad that adding that control worked out.
I love it.
Started saying that, I was like, wait, where do you do that?
Yeah, where did that come from?
We just told them they had a doc control, a document control,
Uh-huh.
and then just tie it to the documents, and so they can actually come in and add basically related documents
Right.
to
So,
the AR payment session.
so for example, Carlos would always ask me, well, what invoices were being paid? And here, you would click there, and you
Did you
can
do it
see
on
all
here
these
too?
invoices. Huh?
Did you guys add it on this?
No, this was already here.
No, but I'm saying down, did you add a document control at this level too? Or just on that?
No, but then all he would do, so if he sees who paid what, he could actually look on the check.
Yeah.
And, he wanted to see the actual checks. And so then it's not gonna pull up, but,
Mhm.
would it let me attach? No, because and he didn't want everybody in the company to be able to see the checks coming, so he created a special area on the server of M1 for Sally and I to be able to view those checks.
Sure.
Same with the packing slips. I don't know why, but he just doesn't want everybody knowing what we're charging for product.
Makes sense.
And
Speaking of customer payments, y'all may not deal with this, but we're in the steel business, we deal with a lot of defective material, something may
us
not be.
too.
And so a lot of our customers will make a deduction on their check, their own debit. So they're paying our 4 invoices for $10,000, and then they're taking a $500 debit, which we need to put out onto their account. And I've heard that there's not a good mechanism to put unapplied items.
Well, do you just take it for their word and you just allow that $500 debit, or
Well,
do you
we-
investigate it first?
Well, no, we post it on their account right away. I mean, when we're.
So you don't leave an
taking our cash
open balance?
receipts, no, I mean, it shows up out there it'll show up as a deduction on their account, as if and it's gonna stay out there until we either issue credit
Resolve it.
for it or they pay it back.
Okay,
But we post it to the account immediately.
so the 500 stays on,
It stays on the
on
customer
the AR.
account, on the AR. Mhm.
and then, so if you're leaving it on the AR, so and your question is if you want to credit?
No, how do you put it out there in the first place when you're in cash?
Well, they just short pay the invoice.
Couple different ways to do
We
it,
don't know what
really.
invoice it goes to is the problem. They may be paying
Oh,
6
okay.
invoices.
Sure.
But they may be debiting us for something that they actually paid 2
Yeah,
months ago.
They're
So
just taking it out.
We don't want to tie it to the wrong invoice. We just want to put it out there
So it's an overpayment?
Or it's an
I mean, an underpayment on the account?
an underpayment, and they typically create their own, they'll list our invoice number, and then they've created their own debit memo number, debit memo 101. It'll be a deduction on the check under debit DM 101 minus $500. And so we'll put that on the account under their numbers so we know what it is. They'll recognize it on their statement as being their own deduction.
So if you have 3 or 4 invoices, let's just say they're $1,000 a piece,
Mhm.
and on their check stub, it doesn't show which one they're short paying?
And it may not be any of those. It may be
Something
It may-
previous, it may
something.
just show up as a debit memo
Right, they
from
may
a
have paid for
previous.
something a month ago, then when they started using that time to do that, they'll hit us now on this check.
Oh,
They
wow.
already paid for the material before. So in our current system, there's your list of invoices, but then there's an unapply option where you can put something back onto the account.
See, when it's an overpayment, that's easy, you just apply it and you
Well,
leave
that's
the
what I was
credit on
thinking
the
is that you
account.
just go into AR, do the separate payment header, and just let it create
But
an
they're doing it.
overpayment.
But they're doing an underpayment.
Can you put
A
in
negative amount.
No, it won't let you do a negative amount. I've tried it.
Because you can't create a credit memo directly from here. I mean, you could do it in an adjustment, but that's actually gonna ask
It asks you for an account number.
what account number and what invoice you're applying the adjustment to. So,
I don't think you have to use an ID. I think it'll just leave I don't think you have to use an invoice ID. When you do the adjustment,
I think so. Let's see.
oh, but it's gonna
The adjustment,
have to
you
do
have to
it-
actually do it to a specific invoice.
do it.
Because the fields don't even become enabled until you select an invoice.
Yeah,
So if you create a new invoice,
Well, I mean, really, to create a credit memo, it's,
you just go there and
It's
create
pretty
a credit
straightforward.
memo.
You just-
And you can name it what they're naming it on the check. So
Yeah.
if you have those permissions, because not everyone
not everybody does.
is able to edit the invoice ID.
So you would go in, you generate the next invoice ID, or, by hitting next ID, or if you have it set to auto increment. Either way, you could, if you don't auto increment, you can put in whatever that you need. Select it as a credit. Put in this case, let's say it's billing, because they owe us a lot of money. Put it for whatever period you want, set the terms. Go to the line, and again, you might not know what PO it's gonna be related to. It's not a required field. You could put in here, customer credit, C, blah, 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 whatever number they give you.
And if they're not returning the part, then I use the G&A account.
So let's just do that for the heck of it.
And I just put whatever we're crediting.
Yeah.
Then once they tell me what invoice, because it'll show on the AR as a negative amount. And then once
So,
you get that solved, then you can go and apply that credit to whatever invoice.
yeah, so the trick here on in credits is either a negative quantity or a negative dollar, but not both. Right. So I just always do negative quantity and then whatever the dollar amount is. So now, once we've got this, everything looks good. We can print it off if we want. Post it. Get the warning about posting. You can't undo it. Now, when we go to run
Go to the AR.
the aging for these guys, we're going to see they've got all these invoices, but now they also have this $500 credit out there. And it doesn't really matter. Like I said, you could set the due date and stuff like that, but in the end, it doesn't really matter because it's just going to sit out there until it's
you
used.
apply it.
But it made a GL entry
It did.
Yes,
for this, and so it already credited back sales.
once it's
Well-
posted.
It would credit back. The journal it actually makes, one side's AR, the other side is whatever part group is associated with that part.
See, and the GA is miscellaneous, because see, like, when we have a customer that they return product to us, we put it back into our inventory. And then,
Is there a default sales account set in this database? So there.
oh yeah, you have to select the
So,
part.
but here's the funny
I'm
thing.
sorry.
No, I was laughing
How did it
because I
post?
just created an unbalanced journal.
How did it do
There
that?
you
It
go.
shouldn't have posted.
Well,
Without-
that's why I'm thinking you have a default sales account defined under data space.
No, it won't let me post unless there's a part group. Right click and see where it went.
Let's go look at the journal.
It should not have posted, because it won't let me post.
Yeah, I just went to your generic sales account. So in your data set properties, when you set everything up, there's a spot for you to put in default sales account.
Mhm.
So if there's not a part group, well, remember, we're in your test data set too.
Yeah, in ours, you cannot post it
Yeah.
unless I go back, because it'll skip over it when I'm posting my invoices.
But what you can do, and keep in mind, just because that's a sales account and the part group is typically used for sales, you can put any GL account in there you want. I mean, we have.
Yeah, we
GL
have an
accounts.
account called customer discounts,
Mhm.
and that's where that goes. But when, that's funny that it did that, because you can't do that on the
You can
real
set up a
data
part
set.
group just for that. That way everything that hits that part group will.
And then it
know
would
what
go to
is.
whatever account you wanted it to go to.
Yeah.
But like I said, the other
But-
side of it will always be AR.
Right.
Yeah, because on that G&A, that particular part group,
Yeah.
so if we're doing an invoice, it actually goes into one of our sub-accounts of our sales, and then at the end of every month, Carlos doesn't like seeing that negative number, so he wants me to, I pull up that report, take that total and put it against the other
So
sales. part.
now when I go in here to our payment section we had earlier, and I change that back to payment and choose Boeing, all the way here at the bottom is gonna be,
Yeah, or you can hit the little thing at the
Yeah.
top, and, because I always hit
So
that when I
there's
go
my
to pay
credit.
bills to take the credits first.
and then in terms of actually using that, so assuming that they were actually sending me a regular check, I would put their check number in, put in their dollar amount that they sent us, let's say they gave us 12 grand. Go in there, I check off whatever they're paying, let's say they're paying that invoice. Now, to apply the credit, because I've already used the entire payment amount, I just have to go to,
Hit the credit first.
what did I do?
Hit the credit first. You have to, or change the dollar amount to 11,500.
Well, no, I'm gonna take the 12,000 they gave me, but I'm also gonna apply the 500.
Then they're only paying 11,500. See how it's taking the full 12,000 payment?
No, because that's what I want.
Just click the $500.
But you want to apply the credit, and they're still paying you the
You
12,000.
can't apply it unless I modify that
Unless you
amount.
hit the credit, oh,
Use
right,
credit first.
use the credit first.
Well, but even if I do that, so.
Go ahead, use credit first. Now hit that, and the balance will be 11,500, or 12,500, to net the 12,000 that you actually received.
Payment method, oh, I didn't choose my payment method, sorry. Okay,
And then in your deposit amount, you always got to put that 12,000, otherwise it won't show up on your reconciliation.
oh yeah, I just copy and paste here. That way I don't have to do the math.
Couple of times that happened. I'm like, I know the deposit's in there, but it's not showing in the bank reconciliation.
Yeah. And, well, and I think at one point,
And I think
I don't remember who I did it for, but somebody wanted a reminder. So when they actually went to post, before it actually saves, there's an event in there you can put code behind. And it actually came up and said, did you fill in the deposit amount? And they had to say yes or no.
Just make it a default account or required field, that way it forces them to.
Well, you can do that, you can do that too. So, well, actually, you guys just showed me something new, because I always thought you had to do the credit memo as a separate payment header. Yeah, all right, here you go. Good deal.
Mm-hmm.
because I always hit, see
Yeah,
where the
like
little
a-
dot is,
Yeah,
whenever, before I pay any vendor,
You look at the credits.
I look at the credits first. I hit that dot so it pulls all the credits up, because I could have 50, 60 invoices there.
Makes sense.
I mean, that's for the AR, but I also do it for the payables.
Well, and the payables, you've always been able to do in the same header. Maybe you couldn't do it in the header, same header on the AR at one point. I don't know. It would have been a long time ago, like probably version 5 or 6. So,
Do you ever do prepayments in your system?
Yep.
And how do you do those?
Go to, that's Sally's forte.
prepayments for vendors or?
AP.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay,
sorry.
so go to AP. And,
Oh,
no, go to AP payment entry.
yes.
And so, for example, if we're buying something with a credit card,
Mm-hmm.
we do it as a prepayment because we don't have the material in yet.
Okay.
So the receipt has to be created, then the invoice, and then we go behind and we'll apply the prepayment
Mhm.
once everything's in and posted. So whoever we're gonna make it to, or it could be, we don't do it,
You don't do it that way?
oh, if it's a vendor that we're getting an invoice, yes.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
So you're right.
Yeah, so if you're eventually gonna
And
get
you
an
check the
invoice,
prepayment box.
you just check this prepayment box here, and then put in the dollar amount that you're
Just
paying.
put in. So when
Yeah.
you, but keep in mind that once you post it and everything,
Mm-hmm.
it will reduce your accounts payable by 25,000 because it's a prepayment.
Mm-hmm.
So until you get the receipt, until you get the invoice in.
Yeah.
And then once it comes in, then if we make it, if it's credit card, I go to the credit card account and I apply the invoice with the prepayment
Mhm.
and it's a zero balance.
Yeah. Do you use the same method for deposits to vendors?
Deposits to a vendor, yes.
Yes. Okay.
That's,
You set it up as a
That's just the
prepayment?
regular
Okay.
control.
And usually in that memo field, I just put an easy cross-reference, I just put the PO number.
She puts the
or
PO
whatever
number in
we'll
there.
use. That would just make sure that, so often we will have several prepayments out there to
Mhm.
the same vendor and just a quick cross-reference. in case
Okay.
Anything gets wacky later.
Because a lot of times, like we'll buy some parts off Amazon or eBay
Mm-hmm.
and it may take 2 weeks to get in. So that way, if I still have an open credit on when I run my payables, I'm like, wait a minute, did this come in? Sometimes receiving doesn't receive it in, or they don't know the PO, so
Yeah.
they just,
Or it goes across months, like the last time when you were doing last month, and you're like, what happened? That you knew it had to be that Amazon thing,
yeah.
but we paid for it at the end of one month and got it in the next month. Not a big.
Customer deposits are a little bit different. Usually, it does have a deposit function here
Mhm.
in the system, but I don't use it. Usually what I'll do is I'll receive the deposit, so it keeps a negative balance on the receivables,
Mhm.
on the AR. But then I do a journal entry, moving it over to customer deposits on my balance sheet. And then, because it could take 2 to 3 months before we have the product built, depending on lead time. We have long lead times on some stuff. And then once it's actually invoiced, and the reason I do that is our commission is paid on money received. But that's why I do that,
Yeah, that
because
makes sense.
I'm not going to pay them on it until we actually ship the product. So I move it over into the balance sheet, and then once we ship that product, because I'll have a balance in my customer deposits, then I move it back over, and then I know when to pay the salesman.
Do you use the standard, how do you calculate your commissions?
I do it manually. I have a separate spread. I don't do it through here. I'm experimenting right now.
Because I was just thinking, I mean, even if you wanted to use the deposit function, you could actually filter out, because I don't know if you.
Because remember, we have NREs
No,
and
I
stuff
know.
that they don't get paid commission on.
But here's the thing, so if you're looking at the invoice entry, and this is what obviously the commissions are gonna be calculated against, even though you don't see it, there's actually a third invoice type there. So you could automatically, out of the report, filter out anything that's a deposit invoice. And then you can use the deposit procedure in M1, because it's pretty slick if you only need to take one deposit. you need to do a deposit with progress payments,
Yeah.
things get a little bit more complicated.
And if you do the deposit function, it locks everything.
Mhm.
You can't change. That's one of the big problems we run into. You know, they'll have a 30-line order, they'll do a deposit on it, and they'll want to come back and change one of those lines they got a deposit on. In order to do it, you have to reverse the payment out, reverse the deposit out, everything.
Yeah, that's why I
You
just
know, one way
receive
you
it
can
as
get around that,
miscellaneous
Gary,
and transfer
is
it over.
maybe when there is a deposit.
So a separate line item on
Yeah.
the invoice for a deposit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you have the line items actually be 0 and then have a deposit line for whatever the deposit amount is. And that way you can still modify the lines even after you've taken the deposit. I don't know what that would cause problems downstream for you, but.
See, and we don't have that many customers that do that, you know, that are, that put a deposit down. Usually if it's a fast turnaround type thing and I haven't
Mhm.
finished doing their credit checks and things like that, or if it's a super large order. So that's why I do it that way, because when I'm looking at the balance sheet, if I see customer deposits and there's a dollar amount, all I have to do is click on it to see who's in it. Then I go and ask the salesperson, what's the status of this? It just brings up a red flag for me.
Sure. Yeah, so there's,
And I don't, if someone gives me a large deposit, I don't want it to skew my, my AR. So that's why I move it over to the
well,
liability.
what it does by
account.
default is when you set up the customer deposit account, it is a liability account.
Mhm.
So as soon as you
Right.
follow it through,
It goes into the
it
contract.
goes right into that account, and it sits there until you actually invoice the shipment, the final shipment, and then it comes back out and it goes to the correct sales account.
I know
And
we
what-
did that in the beginning, but I didn't like,
Another thing
It
that
seemed
would
like
do
it was too
when you use a
complicated.
deposit, it'll really skew your numbers per se. If you go out there and look at the invoices made this month, and then go back and look at general ledger, it's going to be different in there for the deposits that are out there. That's one thing ownership of our company gets high about. They say, how many invoices you make this month? Say, you know, $100,000. Go out and look at general ledger and it's got $60,000 out there because there's the deposit invoices, everything included in that. And then what makes it even more complicated, if you do a deposit invoice in 1 month, and then the final invoice in the next month, it'll pull that deposit in there. So it'll skew it. Looks like you only invoiced half of it. The general ledger can look, you know, different by half of that invoice amount to pull the deposit back in there.
yeah.
Yeah, so. I forgot, you know, there used to be that trick on query, if you didn't put a space between star and from, it would automatically use the field names. So like eight, they took that out. So now if you
I
wanna,
never use that.
if you wanna see that, if I need something quick, I'll do that, but I don't always have designs or Management Studio open.
I usually.
But yeah, deposits are a type 3 invoice versus a 1, which is an invoice, and 2, which is a credit. So, but yeah, absolutely could be done if you wanted to go down that route.
I just remember there was a lot of steps involved and it's quicker for me to make a quick journal entry.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe.
Well, it goes
If
back
I was
It's all
doing
relative.
strictly
It goes back
accounting
to
besides
internal
HR and
controls.
legal and,
Go back to internal controls, like these two don't make journal entries because they go out and do all the deposits, all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I know they can't manipulate it because they can't get to the general ledger to do them.
Yeah, so if I put in an order, so I mean, as far as, I mean, who enters the orders here? I forget.
sales.
So the salespeople are actually putting it
Mm-hmm.
in. Okay, so there's that.
And like we say in all of our meetings, it all starts with sales.
Yeah, so let's say,
Now, they cannot put in a new customer, Sally or I can only do that because then we put them as a prospective customer. So they can't enter a purchase order until I have all my documentation.
okay,
Because sometimes it could be a 3-day turnaround, sometimes it could be 3 months turnaround. And I'm not, and I can physically put a customer on a hard hold. And then I have to hear it from sales when they're trying to ship it. I'm like, look, where's the T's and C's? Where's the sales tax exemption certificate?
sure. All right, so basically they would put in the order like they've been doing, right? And all they would do is just check this box. You know, I mean, that's the biggest complaint really that people have, is that it's a per line thing and not for the entire order. So you would just say, all right, I can either put a percentage or a dollar amount in. Let's say we're going to get 25%. Automatically calculates it out for me based on the selling price. And then when I come back to the header, now I've got a deposit amount here. Hey, create deposit invoice. Shows me what I want again. In this case, I'm going to mark all. And so if you trust them, you could conceivably have them generate a deposit invoice at the time of the order acknowledgement and actually send it along. We take very, well, some people do. We take very few deposits. I mean, I think they've taken one in the entire time they've used M1.
I think we've taken maybe 2
so,
or 3.
But it is, I mean, unless you wanted, again, it comes down to internal control. Do you want to trust your people to do that, or do you want it handled by finance? Meaning they're ready to send the order acknowledgement, they got to go to you to generate the deposit invoice so you can send them together. Because ideally, you would want to send them together.
But I don't want to pay my salesman on that deposit invoice.
Understand. That's why you filtered out of your report.
Okay, I got you.
So let me post this, and I'll show you how the journal looks, provided we've got one set up.
Well, when you set up the salesman here, can you tell it not to include the deposits in the calculation?
Actually, you're right. They did on this commission report. They did add an option to exclude deposits.
Oh.
So basically, what this is going to go to is, well, that's the account we put in.
It should say customer deposit.
But it would say, yes, customer deposits, and it would be a liability account.
Right.
And then what will happen is it'll sit there until the final invoice, or however you set it up in database options. And then ultimately, when you invoice it, it'll suck that back in.
It'll ask you, do you want to use the depositors? I remember something.
I don't think it asks.
So go and invoice the rest of it.
No, it automatically pulls
Yeah,
in the
it just-
deposits.
automatically.
Yeah.
I thought I saw something where so if you pulled a statement for them right now, it would show,
Yeah, I could.
A credit for
Yeah,
the
credit.
deposit.
Mhm.
not if you created an invoice though.
Yeah, so if we go look at the aging report for Ford, we should see that deposit on there. There it is. But now we'll go ahead and ship this, all right? So
See, that's what I'm saying. It's showing it as,
it's positive instead of negative. I think.
So they haven't
just
paid
showed
it yet, you
they
give them
haven't paid
the
it.
invoice, so it's going to be out there.
so
Oh, yeah, I
gotta
gotta
pay.
pay that.
Yeah.
Thank you for reminding me. Yes, I gotta go say, this is why I'm not an accountant.
No, I was asking her, did she see what he did? He right-clicked on the sales order number.
Oh,
went
yeah,
to
I
shipment
jumped right
entry,
to
and
it.
it jumps right to the shipment with the sales order number already put in there.
Yeah, I'm big into shortcuts.
Well, that's awesome.
Right click is really cool.
Not to tell them how to do their job, but they should have badges like that at the conference.
Yeah, right.
Right click is cool.
And then this is this, I'm a dweeb.
I'm always amazed at what I can get by right clicking, and when I'm stumped, I just right click and see what happens. It's out there. It's like, hey, there it is.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead and pay that. And post that. Oh, wait, hang on. I know, I was getting ahead of myself. I didn't put my deposit amount in.
Yeah.
Again, this is why I'm not an accountant. All right, you know, those that can't teach, right?
Okay, now show the AR now.
All right, so now if you go look at the AR agent for Ford. I know. Because I don't have to slow down to show anybody anymore. It's gone. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so now let's go process our shipment. So now we just hit add from. Oh, wait, I just screwed up the sales order. Let's reverse this. What did I set my delivery type as? Oh, made to order, and it's not made to order. We're gonna pull it from stock. Because we got GA later around. All right, so yeah, right click, go to shipment entry, add from, fills in all the blanks, assuming we're shipping this completely, we're gonna mark all, save it, and we're done. So now, what is that, shipment 44? 10,044. So now we go back to Invoicing Wizard. And there's our invoice. So yes. All right.
Oh, it pulled in the deposit.
So there's our deposit line. It pulls in, and it should be.
Can you hit the preview?
Absolutely.
I want to see what that looks like.
You want to look on your invoice?
Yeah.
I should have showed you the sales order too, because it actually calls out the deposit on the sales order. I'll go back and show it to you.
On the deposits, what we do, we'll copy and paste what's on the sales order description onto the deposit invoice. So the
Rather than
customers
actually
know-
says deposit.
Right.
Yeah.
So the customers can see what they're making a deposit on.
Okay. Does it pull in the PO number and everything?
I mean, if I
Yeah.
filled out a PO number, it would have. I didn't fill one out.
Well, it says shipment 4543545. See where, on the first line where it says your PO. So you could have put that in when you created the deposit invoice?
I could have. Yeah.
Okay.
So going back to the order to show you what that looks like. Well, let's use the default because I don't know how you guys modified yours. It might not be on there anymore. So it shows you the deposit required, total deposit required, percentage. And then your invoice total is the entire amount.
Because I know we used it in the beginning. But like I said, I think we've maybe only done 3 or 4.
Sure. So now if I post this, let's go back here. We can go look at the journal that gets created. And we can see that that money now comes up back out of our accounts payable and goes into sales.
So when you went back it showed the commission amount, is that?
You can also mark deposit lines as non-commissionable.
So then it'll go back and calculate commission on the full price of the invoice, not the.
I believe so. We'd have to look at the AR commission report.
Since the deposit is showing.
Maybe they didn't. I thought they did have an option not to see the deposit. Yeah, see, it's the entire amount. 100% of zero.
So it's. Oh, it's because, well, it's because we haven't posted the 10,650 payment yet.
Well, but even so, we don't have commission rates, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true.
So.
So then it brings in both over at the same time.
But I mean, again, if you're going to use this or you wanted to use this, you could easily filter out commissions.
I mean, they're entitled to the entire.
Well, but you don't want to pay when you receive the deposit amount.
Right.
Because even if I was looking at this after everything was said and done, and we shipped and they paid their last invoice, really all I want to see is the 10,006. Well, no, that's.
No, you
I want to see the entire
full.
12. Yeah.
Because I'm not going to pay them on a deposit when their product is shipped.
Correct. Probably have to test it out a little further.
That's interesting because you're given the credit of 500 there. And it
Yeah,
says
for
commission
mowing.
100%.
Yeah.
But it's only $25 commission amount.
100% of whatever their commission rate is.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
I know that always
Gotcha.
throws people off.
Because I'm starting to put that, because I'm kind of testing
Hmm.
both the way that I do it, because basically I export invoices and then I do my totals, take out all the NREs and stuff that's non-commissionable, and then calculate it that way.
Hmm.
And then I have another spreadsheet that I use for all invoices that were paid. And so it takes me about an hour to work on commission every month.
That doesn't sound like an hour of fun.
Oh.
So here, do y'all use the AR wizard or just the AR invoice where you enter?
I just do the AR invoice.
Okay.
Because we want to name the invoice number the same as the package.
Oh,
number,
okay,
so we're
okay,
not going to
and-
bring in another ID.
Okay.
Each.
You don't have change ID rights.
I do.
Well, it's an extra step, so yeah, that makes sense.
So the AR wizard, that just brings up your shipments for the, or
AR
how does?
AR Wizard is gonna bring up any shipment that has not been marked as invoiced.
Oh, okay.
And so when you go to actually create, like if I create, a couple invoices here,
Mhm.
it's just gonna grab whatever the next number is.
Okay.
And so it generates both those there. And at that point, if I wanted this invoice number to be something else, I'd have to actually come up here to the M1 button,
Oh, okay.
go to change ID, go to invoices, provided I have rights to, because that's, change ID is like the highest level of access for a given table. So
But I
it
could
used to
just
be a
be-
completely separate function.
Because see, we use A's and B's too, because sometimes we have to void an invoice
Sure.
and it won't let me well, if you void it, it'll let me recredit, but if they've paid something on it,
Yeah, you can't redo anything.
and then I need to credit off a certain amount, if I need to, and they ask me to redo the invoice for pricing issues or something, I have to put an A behind it.
Well, I mean, you can always change, even if there's an invoice ID has been posted, you can change the ID.
Not if it already exists.
But that's true, not if it already exists.
Right, so if they made a payment on it,
Yeah.
and then they came back after the fact and said, wait a minute, this invoice is wrong, I need a corrected invoice, but they've already made a payment. So then I have to credit off the difference,
Mm.
and then, or credit back, make a mock invoice for an A, with an A, and then another one with a B, and it can get kind of,
Lots of fun.
Back at the beginning of the AR wizard, invoice wizard, will it allow us to do a search by customer ID and customer location since we have multiple locations for customers?
It's just customer ID,
Oh.
customer ID and ship date. And then you have a filter of showing.
it says customer ship location, group shipments.
Well, that's if you're grouping. So what it means is if I have two invoices or two shipments from the same company, if I say group by ship location, it'll actually combine them on a single invoice.
That's what you guys use since we're doing multiple shipments too.
Yeah.
Like
We're changing
CVR.
installs and the parts.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask, Ray, would this be beneficial to us?
See, and like with us, we'll have a master, like with one of our customers, we could have 20 different POs going at the same time. So we can't use that because the POs have to be done separately.
Individually.
Gotcha. Yeah, we rarely group shipments, or for that matter, even group receipts. Typically, it's a invoice per shipment and invoice per receipt.
And that's one of the other things that's really crazy is, Kathy used to be my assistant. Now she's out there in charge of the warehouse. So
Mhm.
now it's working really good because she knows how it affects accounting when they try and take shortcuts out there in the warehouse. And one thing that drives me crazy is our warehouse used to have like 3 different shipments. 3 packing slips,
Mhm.
and they would combine the packing slip. They'd say, oh, okay, that's a total of 300. So instead of doing 3 receipts, they would do 1 receipt with 300. Well, when you get the invoicing, it made
Yeah.
it difficult because you have only 1 entry in the system, but we have 3
different
separate.
Items, yeah.
Actually, yeah, now that you said that, we do actually group receipts because the way that we track lot numbers on certain products, we actually might get in 100 or 200, and we'll actually split that up into multiple receipts. Because our lot numbers, we've actually changed them so that they're unique, they're not reused. But basically, our lot numbers behave the same way as serial numbers, they're all unique. We basically, I have a customization in there for next ID. So yeah, they occasionally do have to group them to match the supplier's invoice.
See, what really makes it difficult is when they group them like that. Sometimes the price is different, depending on the quantity ordered.
Sure.
You get a price break at 5,000, a price break at 1,000, and a price break for 10,000.
Should I learn IT?
But if they receive them all under one, I can't do that breakout. I mean, I can edit the pricing, but then on the uninvoiced receipts, it leaves the pricing
But you could,
skewed.
even if it combines them as a single line item, you could actually break that out into multiple line items with the correct pricing.
Well, I could edit the pricing, but then under your uninvoiced receipts, it
I
still
see what
leaves
you're
a
saying,
balance.
because, yeah, you have to go back and manually check that then.
So, but that's one thing I love with Kathy back there, because they don't do that anymore.
Good.
They try not to, right?
Yes.
Good deal.
What's the financial statement module? Is it pretty robust or?
We've edited, because you can actually put, like do an ABC balance sheet, I know it's not gonna, but we have actually categories where we have a main category, we have
There's not much in this database.
do it like from 2005.
You guys have the AFR tool? No, that's something.
Not yet.
That's really, are you a spreadsheet guy?
Yes.
You can find it.
Basically,
It's basically an Excel spreadsheet that downloads.
it's a plugin in Excel that directly ties back to the M1 database.
Okay.
So then you can structure your chart of accounts however you want.
So,
Because one thing that Crystal does, and this is where Crystal sometimes has problems with financial reports, is it's very linear, the way it looks at everything.
right.
So if you have a chart of accounts where the accounts are not sequential in terms of the type of accounts they are,
Exactly.
you can actually, in AFR, you can actually mix and match and say, these are my accounts that represent this category and stuff. I mean, I think,
Definitely worth looking
yeah, we're actually, as a matter of fact, next week when they do the AFR demo, our director of finance is looking at it again. And
We looked at it numerous times.
our cost accountant is actually going with us to the conference, and he's gonna actually sit through the AFR class. So I think probably at the end of the year, we may add it.
It's not that much.
No, I've been recommending it for probably about a year.
Have you ever used FX? Because
It's really similar to
it's
FX.
identical. From what I could tell to FX, it looks like they bought it, changed the headings on it and put it in there.
But yeah, definitely something you should look into. Because, I mean, they're not bad, but
It a lot depends on how you set up your chart of account and how
Yeah,
useful
right.
this is.
But I haven't had any, I like the way that there's not much on that one, but
look at the landscape one. You're gonna show us
they
much
still
different.
haven't fixed that.
No, they haven't.
No. I've, like I said, I've done some minor stuff to ours. But,
The detail, they still haven't fixed the detail part when you click on the detail for the month and it's.
oh, yeah, it drills down to the wrong record.
Mhm.
When I went back to my journal entry and put in a lot more parent accounts. Went to by parent, And that way it breaks down to all my classifications.
We use parent accounts
Yeah,
very
we
much,
use, that's what we use too.
because it was actually funny. Like I said, our director of finance, he has a lot of detail built into the chart of accounts, but he's also got parent accounts. And the last time or the time before he presented to our board of directors, they basically said, look, man, you're showing us way too much detail. Start out here, and then if we need to, we can drill down. So
That's what we do
our
too.
reports have gotten much
Pull an income
Much
statement, I'm curious what it looks like.
cleaner to look at. We'll do both of them. So this, you've actually got quite a bit of comparison.
Okay.
So, you can do this year, if you're doing budgets, you can do year to dates, month to dates. I don't know, I guess this year, last year is probably the biggest comparison. I don't know if this actually showing anything.
Probably just what I put in today.
Yeah, so. I
wish I was making that much profit.
Well, I was gonna say,
96%,
we use parent
that's
accounts. We don't do, I don't want to say he doesn't do details, he doesn't do cents. So that's kind of the format of what we primarily use.
And
So
one
it's
thing,
pretty clean. What's that?
one problem with that is,
Yeah.
when you tell it don't do cents, it doesn't, just not print them, it just drops it.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
that's true. So
And
if
so
you're doing
the balance sheet will
comparisons,
be out of
yeah,
balance, and
Right.
everything will be out of balance at that point.
it just doesn't round and it just drops off completely. They're gone. So, but yeah, that would be the pretty nice profit, wouldn't it?
Mhm.
And then the landscape.
The one thing I run into in a lot of those, the fields aren't wide enough,
Yeah,
and it stars everything out, and it's just irritating.
It's on that A4 paper too, which is the first thing that changes the A4 paper, then expand everything.
I said do something like 2005 or something.
yeah. Oh, yeah, because there's not much there. So 2007 actually should have quite a bit of stuff. Let's try that. 12 for one.
Or one, I'm sorry.
That's right. Or not. All right.
I thought it was 2005. No?
Maybe.
Another thing, when you send it to GL, watch your description length, because you do it in detail, it'll wrap it around, and you end up with all this weird spacing
Okay.
in your
Yeah.
reports.
Even though there's the description field is 50 characters, don't use all 15. I don't know if that looks any prettier if you use the parent accounts or not. Maybe a little.
The one thing I found on the parent account one, like on the income statement, you'll say revenues, 22 million. Next line, total revenues, 22 million. Cost of sales, 500,000. Cost of sales, 500,000. It kind of repeats itself
Oh,
in
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
See, and like on ours, we use the parent accounts, but, wow, no. That's under the main categories, like asset liabilities, current assets. But it'll break down our sales, for turnkey labor on the jobs, things like that. And then break down our cost of goods. I don't know. Check the cash flow. I prefer to do that manually.
And the projected cash flow statement on there,
Mhm.
have you ever tried using that?
I don't like it.
If you have any old data out there, anything that really skews it,
Yeah, I don't use it. I actually export into Excel.
like with us, our ship date is usually nowhere near our invoice date. And that'll use ship dates lots of times in terms when to calculate something off a sales order for the future. So it really throws our cash flow projections out of whack, because we might ship something, might not get invoiced for 3 months. But it says customer terms are 30 days, so it's going to ship it, and then 30 days later, it's going to tell you should have that cash whether you've invoiced it or not out there.
This doesn't really tell me much of anything. Let's do a cutoff date. We don't have much information in there.
Can you only do it for one cash account at a time?
Yes.
Yep. Move to back month. But as far as the general ledger, the way that, I mean, I haven't had any issues as far as something I couldn't look at on the GL. Because if I have questions, one thing that I have noticed in the beginning, the debits and credits under the AP module and in the general ledger, it'll show it going in, going out, but they show them opposite than what they should be. So a credit in it would show as a red credit when it actually should be a debit. And when we had one of our audits for the bank, they kept saying this isn't making sense. And I said, well, it's Australian. But that was one thing. So I would have to go and print a different report, because auditors are used to looking at the general ledger, but it was opposite than what standard accounting principles tell us. And so finally, once they got that through their head that it's opposite, it all depends on how you pull the data too.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have to export something, I'll sort it, do whatever I need to do. And we did have one problem, and I don't know if you remember this, when we were importing the data. For some reason, there was a glitch and it did a double import on one of the, we still never, it's still showing, actually we moved it to like a temporary account.
Suspense account.
Mm-hmm. But it had something to do with the inventory upload or something.
The initial inventory count line.
Yeah, it had like doubled 89,000 twice in that account. We can't figure out how, and one couldn't figure out how it happened.
I don't know, we can zero it out.
Yeah, but
Not the way you want to.
what do you zero it out against?
You don't zero it out with a journal.
Because you can't.
Which is why you wouldn't want to do what I would suggest.
The other quote that I found in it is the trial balance, the debits and credits on trial balance are different than the debits and credits on the balance sheet.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. Depending on how you pull the information.
Different people
The
wrote the
sign.
report.
The
that's
signs are
exactly what
backwards,
that
and
is.
our auditors freaked out when they saw that.
Yeah, and trying to explain it to them.
The balance sheet's wrong and the trial balance is correct. I don't know, I mean, yeah, it's like that, how it actually appears. I mean, if it's that big of a deal for your auditors or whatever, you can fix it in Crystal. But the only thing I would account to that is that their reports were written by different people.
We see the same thing in the job costs.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, one pulls from accounts payable invoice, the other one pulls from the PO. And, they just never match.
Do you link your POs right to the job? You buy through a job, or we run everything?
Sometimes,
Okay.
they keep going back and forth, they can't.
They
decide
keep
which
switching
way.
back which they want. Yeah.
If we buy everything for inventory, so it goes through inventory, doesn't go directly to a job or anything.
Same thing here. I mean, the only thing we buy to a job is subcontract services.
We don't even do that. I put that through inventory as non-tangible.
And then just issue it to the job or non-stock item, so your inventory doesn't build.
Oh, no, I stock it.
Oh, you do?
That, it has a value to it.
That's true. That's true. So I don't know, is this the more correct of the two? With the credits actually shown as negative or not?
Yeah, that's,
To me, it is. It's more like, to me, it's more pure accounting looking at it this way. Your credits are negative.
Because I was gonna say, the only other thing you gotta be careful of is when you're setting up your GL, is when you're actually in the chart of accounts and either creating them or importing them, there is a column.
On how to show whether it's negative or. Yeah.
Exactly, what the normal balance for that account is, whether it's
Right.
debit or credit.
Right.
And the interesting thing is that if you actually look at a given account, it's not even on here. So usually what happens if something's wrong, it's because it was wrong in the import.
Right.
Because that value, that normal balance, debit or credit, is just a numeric value in the database.
In that advanced financial report we were talking about, pulls from like where the trial balance is. So its signs are the same as that, right? It's on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm curious. I don't have anything there. That would be if it was a parent account.
Well, what you would have is you'd have one
Cash.
account
checking.
for cash, and then underneath that
Bank
you have
accounts.
everything. Yeah.
That's a, yeah.
So like, this is obviously the sample database.
See,
But,
like I have bank accounts as the parent account.
yep, and then
And I'll
you
have
each
petty
of the
cash
accounts underneath.
operating, payroll,
Sure.
savings, blah, blah, blah.
You know, so like 1,200, or in our case 12,000,
Right,
is our inventory account, and then underneath that we have all of our other inventory accounts.
raw material with,
One I have
Scrap.
broken out even further. I
Finished
have
goods.
like raw material, a parent account for it, parent account for finished goods.
Okay,
That way, when I see my inventory, I can see all my different segments in there,
sure.
and the width.
What is this one? Numerically correct? I can't remember.
I try to make mine
One,
numerically
if you
correct.
use the parent account, you have to make sure in the setup that you have it to where they cannot post the parent account. Otherwise, you have
Right, yeah,
people post
that's-
into them and it creates a mess then.
Yep,
Yeah, that's pretty correct, I guess.
I didn't see, did I see, I didn't see, oh, there's the equity.
The what?
When you were scrolling through, I didn't see the equity and then I saw it down there.
Oh, yes, all the way at the bottom. Yep.
If we set up divisions in this,
Mhm.
chart of account, just have the header on it, the 100 or whatever, but we'll have different equity statements or retained earnings
Yes.
for each of the divisions.
Correct, that is correct. So what Gray is talking about is
Down there.
in the GL account number itself, 3 characters is your division. The middle 5 characters are the actual chart number, and then the last 3 characters are the department code. So like for us, we have departments for everything. So our generic or executive account is 000, right? And like all my IT stuff gets dumped to 020.
See, we have a thing over here that's made.
And for ease of tracking, I don't know how your manufacturing set up, but I set up my general ledger department, the same as my production department. That way everything flows, otherwise
Right.
you get out of sync in there.
That's one of the reasons why we're probably gonna get AFR, because sales has a very distinct way they wanna look at things. And to the most part, it matches the GL, but it does not match our production departments at all. So the question is, do we basically redo the GL, or do we just simply get AFR and redo our financial reporting to match what our production and our salespeople want to see? So that's why I think we're going to end up getting AFR. Because at this point, you know, 3 years in, almost 3 years in, trying to redo our GL is a nightmare. I hope my people heard that. So,
I think everybody's still on.
I don't know, let's find out. Oh, Gary, you're still on?
I am.
Yeah.
Says you're on.
Probably gonna hear that.
Sorry, I'll post a link to the YouTube once it's done. Let's go here